Hello and welcome to Aetheryte Radio for the first time. Uh,
You don't gotta lie. They know. And
No,
they're
it's the
okay
first-
with it.
it's going to be edited and it's going to be perfect.
No, this is just the good future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll go with that one. That's good. Gamerscape's Final Fantasy XIV podcast and a few Jacks joining me today. We've got Zenidra, Aldino, Rook, and joining us as our patch 5.4 guest reviewer, we've got Pook.
Hello, Pooh.
You,
Welcome.
Welcome.
Seriously, thank you for the opportunity. This is exciting.
We're excited to have you. I can't believe, we always think about who we want to do for our guest reviewers. And your name popped up, and I'm like, how have we never had Pook on the show? And so now we get to kill two birds with one stone. We get to get you on the show, and we get to have you as our guest reviewer. So
Yeah, it's I'm a Rook prototype. That's actually probably the best way to put it.
No, you're the OG, original, beautiful, wonderful Pook. I'm so excited to have you on.
Pook
I was
is like he's like the T-1000 of like the original Terminator. That's what it is. Yeah.
That movie creeped me out when I was young. I love it now.
Oh,
but,
absolutely.
Like, when I was,
Oh yeah.
For sure. Oh, yeah.
Liquid metal guy. Now you're just like, oh, he got the power up from Smash. Cool.
It's right at the perfect time for our generation to be terrified of like dinosaurs from Jurassic Park.
That's
and
exactly what I
aliens.
was thinking. How
And the
many
Terminator.
T-Rex nightmares did you have as a child? Oh my gosh.
I
So
had
many
none.
nightmares.
I love dinosaurs. So even when they were trying to murder people, I was like, they're so cute. I love them. Oh man,
This is
dinosaurs are so great.
all those nightmares of not wanting to like poop in an outhouse after that,
Yep,
out in like a public
exactly.
restroom, because you never know, a T-Rex might show up. You don't know.
You joke, but my partner literally has said that. Literally has said that she was scared as a child because of that.
And you know what? That's
clever
fair.
girl.
Yeah.
I do have to admit though, I have never seen the Terminator.
Why?
That's okay.
We're gonna have to have a movie.
I've
night.
never seen The Godfather, and people always give me stuff about that one.
I've never seen Labyrinth.
Okay.
All right.
Oh,
right.
That's,
gonna
that's the movie I get a lot of trouble for not seeing.
yeah. We're gonna have to
Well,
do
see,
movie
now,
night.
now you can
Yeah.
approach it differently when you watch Labyrinth. One of those characters is kind of what they use to base the Ixali voice on. So now there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's
Or wait,
research.
or was it
Yeah.
Labyrinth or was it Dark Crystal?
Yeah,
No, it's Dark Crystal. You're thinking of the
Dark
Skeksis.
Crystal. It was
Skeksis.
Charlemagne.
the Skeksis.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I see. I don't.
Oh,
I
okay,
don't-
okay.
Whatever.
I was
We
thinking
need
you
to
meant
watch
like
them all again.
the pink bird guys who throw their heads.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
no,
a
it's
direct
totally the
parallel to that in
Skeksis,
Final
yeah.
Fantasy XIV. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
you really don't know the full lore of the game if you haven't actually kind of
Right.
dug into the lore of those guys. So,
Mhm.
Chad, how dare you not have seen every movie in the world? I know,
Right.
right? I like to consider myself a movie buff too, and there's a lot of stuff I haven't seen. It's embarrassing, but anyway, this is a 14 podcast,
This is a Final Fantasy XIV podcast, yeah.
which is why
Welcome
we
to our
start
movie
by
review.
talking about everything that's not Final Fantasy 14.
It's
You have to
fine.
get-
It's fine.
you have to get all the other stuff out of your system, and then it's Final Fantasy XIV time.
There you
Mhm.
go.
Palate,
There you
palate
go.
cleanser.
Yeah.
That's how we
right.
focus. Yeah.
So Mandalorian finale. No,
Let's
okay.
not.
Oh my god.
That'll be 2 hours of us just.
That'll be 2
Moving on.
hours.
Moving on.
All right. So this is our patch 5.4 review episode. So what that means is we are going to talk about things that
In a
were in patch
judgmental fashion.
5.4. Things like everything that was in patch 5.4, like the story. So if you have not done story, if you have not done the Emerald weapon quests, if you have not done anything that you don't want to be spoiled on, now is the time to leave. We would love
We
we'd
will
love to
try
have
and
you here, but we don't want to
yeah.
be responsible for ruining any big things for you. So you
we'll
have
try
to-
and give heads up as we go. It's like, now we're going to talk about blah. So if
Mhm.
you have finished MSQ,
Sure.
but you haven't finished Emerald Weapon, hang out for MSQ and then get out for Emerald Weapon.
Yeah. So and we will do this in chunks. So first we'll do main scenario for this particular review. Previously, we would do MSQ in the dungeon together. It was weird because we started off with them separate, and then people were like, you should combine them because they're related. And we were like, yeah. And then we're like, we weren't feeling it. And just with the way that this patch kind of came out, there wasn't like just an absolute plethora of like gathering and crafting things like there have been previously, which did have their own category. So we're like, okay, we'll split MSQ and dungeon. So we'll have MSQ as a category, dungeon as a category, and then we'll have trial, raid. and then just other to encompass everything else that was added. And there's a lot. So
Crafting has been sentenced back to the other category.
Just for now.
yeah.
Just temporarily.
I mean, there's they've been doing a lot of stuff. They needed a break. I don't know what else they could do. They've been doing good.
There's been so many changes. I assume, I guess, in the future we'll probably see less changes. Question mark.
I just can't believe there's not a Lord of Verminion category. Like, where's
I mean, look, we've had a big fishing boost. We've had the triple triad update. Lord of Verminion could be nice.
I mean, the best thing that they could do, like, if I'm really thinking critically about it, like, how could they turn this into something that would be such a wonderful thing and so many people would be, like, really excited about it? I think the best thing that they could do right now would be to just remove it from the game.
I mean, it worked.
I almost made a comment about Feast that I really shouldn't have made, and so I'm stopping myself.
Oh, it's tough. I like the idea of being able to do fun things with my little minions. I actually had not done any Verminion until recently when I was trying to hoard up MGP and somebody was like, did you know you get a ton of MGP if you do the like initial unlocks and little like, you know, quest things that you have to do to learn about Verminion. And it was the only thing in the gold saucer that I got about halfway through and I was like, I don't know if this is worth it. I was like, I don't know if I'm not having a good time. I'm sad and I would rather not do it.
Remember when I said we're going to be judgmental and you gave me a look like, no way?
Well, then Pook had to bring up Verminion.
Which...
I remember
it's fair.
Verminion.
It's fair.
Okay, so first is going to be that main scenario. There were some really big things in this.
Yeah.
But they were, I think, presented in a way that I didn't care as much as I feel like I should have. Specifically with the tempering, like that's huge. We come back to the source, and Alex is like, you know what? I'm just gonna cure tempering. Let's just get rid of that. Let's fix that. Oh, okay, that's crazy. And it's that from a lore perspective, like that's a huge deal,
right? But
I just. Either the pacing or the way it was presented, I wanted to care, but
it's because we came off of the heels of such big stuff already. Like what we've been seeing this whole MSQ prior is really big universe level stuff, and then it's like, let's go do politics in Limsa Lominsa.
Let's go fix Gabu. Like, not that we don't love Gabu.
Those things are big that we saw in Limsa. The fact that Merlveb went from her classic, like, crush the beastmen, Vilbrand is ours, to we need to make peace with these guys, and going so far as to risk her life to free their leader from tempering again, and then going in with the pirates and being like, hey, we're a nation of pirates, but no, we're not.
This was it was an interesting kind of parallel because, I mean, we saw something similar back in, like, 2.5, right, with Nanamo, where she's like, so, I'm just gonna like change how we do everything in Old Ah here. What could happen? And then she gets poisoned, Raban loses, and like all this crazy terrible stuff happens. And so I feel like this is kind of like the Merweb like equivalent of that, right? And so that was
a little different.
I mean, the thing
don't even
is,
get me started on Sid.
Yeah.
The thing is that anytime Merlveb comes on the screen, it's a gift. It's a personal gift to me.
Oh, sure.
Okay. And I'm like, I don't even care what's happening right now. If we could just stay right on this, I'm just going to be in the corner fanning myself, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to have a great time. And it is interesting, though, Fusion, because, like, I totally agree with you. The pace of this one does feel very, very laid back in a way that I was kind of like, okay, like big things are happening, but it still feels like it's structured in like a super chill way. And I mean, I liked the duel. I liked the moments with the kobolds. And there's even stuff in there that I think is really good and makes Merlveb a great facilitator for this. I mean, the additional information about the fact that, like, this is my other pistol, murder pistol, which I murdered my own father with. I was like, whoa,
death sentence.
God, death sentence, yes. Like, I loved that we got Annihilator, death sentence. Like, we got more lore about her. The fact that, like, we've seen the repercussions of all this stuff that has happened that has made society the way it is in Limsa, and this discussion of, like, a lot of the culture in the nation sort of being forged by war's effects, and, like, Garlemald, right? and the trickle-down effect that it's had with people fleeing and starting new nations and trying to survive, and the conflict that comes from different groups trying to survive. Like, I think a lot of the leaders have realized that they need to look beyond just what survival has done to them and create a culture that is truly about flourishing for everyone and what it means when Garlemald is done, which is big, right? But the way that it was communicated, I did sit there going like, okay, but like, where's all the stuff that was in the trailer that I thought was good? I was like, keep Merlveep on the screen, but like, we just been hanging for a while. I'm okay with that. Alistair's here too, and Graha's my best boy. But like, where's this stuff that's gonna happen?
It all felt very understated for how big these changes were. The tempering alone, like, yay, justice for Gabu. I was really happy to see that, but it was just I don't know if it's because of how they delivered it or because they relied on Porxies for it, which took.
Yeah,
I'm gonna agree
That's
with.
fair.
I'm gonna borrow this from Ethos because I agree with it wholeheartedly. Ethos was also like, they took such a serious moment,
Right.
and resolved it with comic relief. And I do feel that the MSQ this time did feel short.
Yes.
I don't know if it's because 5.3's was so very long. I think that might be why this one feels short. Like, this was, but for everything that happened, I feel like I could sum up everything that happened in like 20 seconds.
Right.
And yet it's all very big things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, I said in the impression show that I just didn't like it at all until we got to the point where the towers shows up.
Yeah.
Because, like, cool, we had a fun rollicking adventure and we'll talk about the dungeon, right? And that was cool. But, like, the political stuff, and I love political stuff, but they didn't really, to me, I think they could have done a better job of showing it beginning to happen, showing the fraying of it happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
There was
so
no
that we could,
build-up.
Right, so it was just like, oh, this guy,
we just kind of walked into the middle of it, and there really wasn't like Merlwyb talks to a guy on a boat, and then like the captain comes out and he's like, stop being
Don't
dumb,
do that.
and that was like the end of it.
The end, right? I was like, if you're gonna do that, give us like a pirate war, a short little pirate war. That'd have been great. That would have been, let him have his own faction. Let us do one instance to fix that. That would have been fine too.
Or like with Merlwyb, we definitely it was like one opinion and then suddenly the other opinion. Where's the in between where she's going, maybe I'm incorrect?
Because I would have loved to see more of that. Like if we got double as long and most of it was in Vilbrand, going around talking to pirate factions, trying to convince them, fighting some of them, doing quests for other ones. Like, that would have been fun.
I mean, and all this does is show that this is like Limsa's not going to hold up well once the Garlean threat is gone. Like, the only thing keeping Limsa together is the Garlean threat.
Right. And, Merlwyb is trying to change that, and we're seeing it, but I don't know.
I mean, I think some of it too is the fact that Merlwyb kind of had a weird disconnect. Like, I feel as though we've almost had more development with almost all of the other major characters. Gridania, a little bit questionable in certain like Gridania's a little like maybe not quite as strong, but I mean, with Nanamo, with Raubon, with Emmerich, with like all these other Hien, we've literally had expansions that like focused on the plight of their people and or how they relate to things that are happening. And Merlwyb has kind of felt like, well, I'm a pirate over here, and it's like it's like, I love her and I think she's super cool, but I think some of that gap is the fact that they haven't really kept up with some of her running development actively in other things. So on one hand, I'm super glad to see it in this patch. And I won't lie, I love a good duel. I thought the whole scene with the duel was really fun. I do agree that I think because there was so much they were trying to do, right? Like, we start out with Gabu and it's like, well, we have to make it feasible that they can actually reverse this on the source. So I'll do that really fast and Sid's gonna be here and then we're gonna see the ironworks for like 2 seconds and then all this stuff. And I was sitting there the whole time like, something's gonna explode, right? It can't just be,
no,
they did
easy.
it. Great. And I was like, okay, great, they did it. Okay. And then it's like, well, now we have to do Merlweeb and we have to do pirate politics. And we're going to show the overall effects of making peace with the Beastmen and what it means to not have tampering through this, because we already had Gabu that was a tie-in and we need to do more development with her. So like all of it makes sense, but I do agree in that it just didn't feel like the whole momentum hung together totally. So a lot of it I just spent going, when is it going to be on fire? And I was just like, when is something bad going to happen?
Exactly.
When are we going to have these flames and this enormous demi-Bahamut thingy that we saw, like, you know, void Bahamut that we saw in the trailer? When are we going to have these towers that we saw in the trailer? I really had trouble seeing how those things were supposed to come together in what we got in the story.
Right. And, you know, I think that's part of it too, right? You get these, I mean, this has been like a big discussion thing for years now, where the trailer shows maybe a little bit more than it should. Because I had that same mindset. I'm going through all this. I'm like, yeah, but like, where's the dragon?
Right.
Like, where's this other scene? Like, you know, it's coming, but you're like, what does that have to do with this?
And
nothing.
Absolutely
nothing.
Like, we did this stuff. All right. Kobolds are good. Oh, wait, look outside. There's a tower now. You know.
Oh, cool. Vilbrand is getting 5G.
Yeah.
Did anybody else have the brief moment of, okay, oh, you fixed the kobolds, cool, Limbs is fixed. What about the Sahagin?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're still there.
They're still there. They're gonna have to work on that. I do like that we got Limbs' story at all, because like it's been hanging there. This was definitely an MSQ of tying up loose ends, but it feels like another awkwardly placed cliffhanger. 4.5 and 4.55 did this as well, where 4.5 had the bulk of the story, and then 0.55 was like 2 quests and go to the Crystal Tower and story stops.
Yeah,
it definitely had that feel good.
And it's that makes me wonder, because 0.4 patches have always been about, this is the new story that we're going forward with, but they always throw in some kind of subversion where like it seems like this is the direction you're going, and then that ends up resolved in the 0.5 somehow. Like it's like, okay, Garlemald towers.
Right.
I mean, if they wanna kill off a character suddenly without us expecting it, this time they could just kill Fandaniel. I'd be okay with that.
It's so tough because like in this one, I don't know. On one hand, I think they're doing this really purposefully. Like we've talked about this before. I think that especially with this patch cycle, they've done a fantastic job of supporting across a lot of different content how they're moving forward, the world, our understanding of things, the story. Like Garlemald is not just contained to the MSQ, right? We have all this stuff with Boja and Garlemald, all this stuff with the weapons and Garlemald. So like I think they're doing a great job of really forwarding a lot of different facets through all the content, as opposed to doing really separate things like, and now there's a robot in Edelshire, and you're like, what? Like it feels like it is all very much working towards the same goal, and even the trailer felt very comprehensive because of that. But it does kind of make for this unfortunate thing where we talked about this last week. Milk Drinker is far more compelling to me as a villain right now.
Right.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Milk Drinker feels so much more tangible to me. I'm like, this sweaty milkman, I could spend the entire next expansion only bringing him down, and I'd probably be fine.
Yeah, I'd be all right.
As just a character, he's the only one right now that I'm like, dude, this dude is bad. Like, we need to get rid of this guy.
Yeah, like he's the first time they're like, hey, remember how we kind of told you, like in hints, that Garlemald is bad? It's bad. Like, look, this is what the bad people there actually do, and they don't hide it. They show us how terrible it is, and it's refreshing as hell.
Yeah.
As far as Fandaniel goes, I'm still not exactly impressed. He came out and point blank told us, I'm just here to screw everything up. And I'm like, I'm of two minds on him, because we have not had a villain that's just like, I just want to screw everything up in a long time. That's his only goal. But I feel like that doesn't make a good villain. That doesn't make the best villain. The best villain has a reason, right? So I'm really hoping they come through with an actual reason, and he's just lying.
On that point, though, like, Xenos has a reason, and it's like a really stupid ass reason, and it's not interesting at all. So for me, the fact that at least Fandaniel is a little crazy, but also like has a little bit of a plan, even if that plan is like, I'm gonna put up some of those pretty like star projectors all over Eorzea and let people see the stars. Like, I don't know what that's gonna do, but at least he's doing something instead of just like, I'm gonna get a new weapon and step on my sword. He just steps on his sword? How shitty was that sword if he can just step on it and break it? Like, yeah, you need a new one, buddy. I hope you had a warranty on that.
I don't know if we gave you the warning at the beginning, but if at any time you want to interrupt us, do it. We interrupt each other all the time, so just jump right in.
I'm gonna jump right in here. Actually, I'm gonna do it. I've been thinking about this a lot because I mentioned another time, and it's something I keep going back to. Xenos had other villains in Stormblood that made Stormblood story good. Like, everybody talks about Stormblood being a weak expansion, and I think they don't give enough credit to how amazing the Tsukiyomi story was. So you got Yatsuyu, you got Fordola, and I know we'll see Fordola again. There's no way we're not going to see more Fordola. But Xenos by himself doesn't really have that because there's no other compelling villain or antagonist out there. But I think what we're doing with Xenos is, while the singular goal itself is kind of disappointing, like, okay, you can describe Xenos, he's fight sexual. That's his orientation. I get it. But I think they're very subtly building up to the fact that Xenos is the exception. When Elidibus summons the simulacrum of Xenos for us to fight in that little storytelling thing he does, even Elidibus can't control him. When they, I don't want to get too much into the trial story, but when that happens, the Oversoul, he can't be controlled.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
I'm thinking about Xenos and the connection to Fandaniel, and I'm thinking about the original sound and what caused the final days. And I'm thinking it has to do with something that literally is beyond the power of the ancients, beyond the power of the Ascians. And I think Xenos is the current representation of that thing.
That's actually a really interesting theory. And I do feel like they're going to do something more with Xenos. He has always felt like a weird, I mean, like you said, in an expansion that, granted, I didn't particularly love everything that Stormblood did, but one thing that I have always praised is exactly what you said. Those, like, really notable, compelling sort of villains, if you will, but like anti-villain, like it's really interesting to me, especially in the patch content, how they developed them. And by comparison, Xenos always seemed very shallow. And it's not to say that like Xenos doesn't have certain things about his character that I think they could really dig into. Like, I think they absolutely could, but we just haven't seen it. So it does feel as though he is a facade for something else. Now, like, what that is, I have no idea. It does make it difficult, though, like we were saying, and like you were saying, Zen, with Fandaniel, for example, right? We have come out of like an era here, right? That like started with Little Seat in Heavensward, and then in Stormblood, and now in Shadowbringers, where I think the 14 team has done such an incredible job with the idea of morally gray storytelling. And like that gets thrown out a lot right now, this idea of like, well, we're going to make everything really ambiguous and kind of good, but kind of bad. But like the way that the 14 team has been doing it is really fascinating, because in a genre of MMOs where the idea of the iconic hero and the fantasy protagonist and all these different things have these like very tropey elements, 14 has been usurping a lot of that and then giving us this beautiful nuance that's very grounded and very real with characters, right? For Dola and Yotsuyu, their themes are incredible because they are people who grew up under an oppressive regime, which is a very real thing, right? Emmett is very theatrical, but this is a man who hides centuries of human emotion. And like, he even uses Shakespeare as a vehicle, which is incredible. Like this, all the world's a stage and I'm acting in it, but at the same time, I'm conveying these deep human themes of loss and the people I lost and the civilization that I have been trying to be a hero for, unknown in the shadows. Like it's really cool. So it makes it hard when we get a boy whose compelling thing is, I just want to cause chaos, because the human themes that have set 14 apart shine when they're talking about real tangible character conflict, you know? Like, so I don't think they're without their complexities. I just hope we get to see more. And it's not that chaos itself can't provide an opportunity for other characters to bounce off of it in a way that's fascinating. I definitely think that's something. It's just that, like, do I feel convinced by them after the MSQ this time? No,
I mean,
not so much.
Definitely something that I wanted to talk about is what the heck is going to happen, right? Because, you know, Fandaniel, as he said, he just wants to die, and he wants everyone to come along with him, right? That's basically it. So what is he doing? Right? I mean, Lunar Bahamut...
Project Super Meteor?
Right, like...
like... Project
mean,
Many Meteors. I don't...
To me, we've had
But why is he waiting?
Yeah, well, maybe it just requires a bunch of...
Because they need the development time with the patch cycle.
Okay, sorry.
he's just summoning something super huge. Like, me, with Eden, and we're talking about 8, I immediately thought of Lunatic Pandora and the Lunateer, right? Like, summoning all the monsters from the moon, technically. We have one left. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Zodiark is supposedly up there. I mean...
Lunar Bahamut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, you can't call him that. The first one was also in a moon.
It's true. I think, for me, I think if I had to, like, rank my villains right now, I think Milkman is definitely at the top of the list, which is, like, bad because it's a side quest thing. Like, he's not...
So you mean the ones that are still alive right now?
Yes. The ones that we're dealing with right now.
Okay.
The ones that we're dealing with right now. Like, I hope they find a really, really good way to weave this into MSQ. But then Fandaniel and then Xenos, like, I just don't care about Xenos. My tinfoil hat thought is that with 5.5 they make Sorrow of Orlet stuff required for MSQ, and that maybe this new weapon that Xenos is going to go get is a weapon, and maybe he oversouls himself. Why not? Let's just double Xenos.
I mean, maybe that's the way you just don't die when you oversoul.
Yeah, you just gotta oversoul
like
yourself.
That does sound like a Xenos certified plan. Like, I'll just oversoul myself then. No.
What's stronger than one of me? Two of me.
Right.
Me inside of me.
I'm just imagining him holding one of his clones by the ankles and just beating us with himself. That'd be great.
I might like him more then. That would be hilarious.
You just have one Xenos do like the Hildebrand pose, just stiffen up, and then he just grabs him and uses him.
It really does seem like they are going to do something with that. And I mean, we've seen them even retroactively make, we were just talking about this, right? We've seen them retroactively make the other bonus primal quests required. So, you know, now things like Warring Triad are required for other quests. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do that to some degree. And if this story weaves in some way. I see Ivory mentioning in the chat Ethys' theory about Fanny Pack, thank you for using his given Christian name, is that his version of recreating the final days is to summon our/Eorzea's greatest fears, like the ancients did in Amarat. Right. I could totally see that. Yeah.
You know what would be hilarious to me is without jumping ahead too much with maybe issues that I know at least me and Aldi probably had with Eden. If they call this the Lunar Cry. It will immediately have way more to do with 8 than Eden did.
Yeah.
But also, please do that. That would be cool.
I did briefly have that thought when he was like, "It's Lunar Bahamut." I'm like,
That's what I was saying. Like the Lunateer to make us all terrified, right?
Yeah.
To scare the world into summoning a primal without even knowing it. You know, I mean, it's a great theory.
New job, time mage, time compression.
I wonder if Fandaniel can get, like, would prayer make Zodiark strong enough to break free?
Maybe. Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's possible.
It instantly makes him more interesting.
It does seem like such a strange way to do that, though, considering you think that Emmett Selk and all them would have attempted that if it was. Like,
maybe.
The thing with Emmett is Emmett told us he was telling the truth, and he always did. He stayed true to that. Emmett was always honest with us. That was the hardest part to deal with when you were leveling up, because you didn't want to trust him. So you're like, okay, he's lying about telling the truth. And then you realize that no, he told the truth the entire time. And that was actually such a great thing about his character. We don't have that promise with Fandaniel. More importantly, I don't think Asahi was ever a person. I think Asahi was always Fandaniel. Like, seriously, they were made for each other.
Seriously.
That's actually really interesting. Yeah, I mean, the idea that there is this big question mark about like what exactly caused the ancient, like we talked about that loud noise, or what happened with these other things. Why did they suddenly start envisioning all this terrible stuff? Why did it suddenly start happening in this kind of way? And like, of course, I guess you could do some sort of larger loss of innocence parallel, right? Where like everyone was so happy living in peace, and then somebody ate the, you know, the apple from the tree kind of deal. And it's like suddenly people are envisioning things that are horrific, and that, you know, continues, and the knowledge of the world expands. Like, you could easily do something like that and not have it be like, that was a baddie behind it the whole time.
Right.
But there is like an interesting idea of, I guess, what would happen if our current people had the ability to do the same. Would they destroy themselves? Would they destroy, you know, like, if this act of creation or this amount of energy was introduced back into the world, would we see something like catastrophic as a result? Like, if people didn't know how to use it, and then, you know, they have lived in this dark world already, and they can give vision to their fears. And using Bahamut, although we've seen Bahamut a billion times, I think it is a very good vehicle for fear, because it is still very fresh in the minds of all the survivors.
Literally screwed up the world.
Yeah.
And there's a very good chance that Fandaniel could be doing this, and the reason that Emmett Selk didn't is because they didn't want to experiment with the source, because if they ruined the source,
everything goes. Yeah,
that's the
See, this is why I love when we have guests, because they bring in this stuff that we just didn't even think of, and then we're all like, "Woo!"
Yeah, you know, the story of the Asians that are left over now is so interesting to me, like what they are all doing, because we know that they were on every shard, right? Because they were trying to simultaneously bring them all to the tipping point. So like, I love that, and it's so, I don't know, fertile for story. And Fandaniel isn't the best representative of it, but I can't wait to see what he does, of course, because it's all chaos now.
The final chapter of this star, according to the voiceover from the end of 5.3, are they gonna WoW Cataclysm our world? Are we gonna do that? Like, we're gonna get a new ARR reborn?
Yashtola said she was going to figure out how to go to other stars, and she's going to do it so that we can leave the source, because it's going to get screwed.
Oh, no.
I'm going to find my 10 hat really quick now.
I do actually worry about that, of like, if they'll give us another reason to go to yet another of the worlds. Now that they've introduced the first, like, you know.
That would be interesting. I mean, and I was kind of skeptical too when they announced that 5.0. It's like, we're going to like another planet, and you're like, but we still haven't gone to so much of the one that we're on.
We haven't seen the new. Oh, Merlwyb is back, and Merlwyb has been somewhere that we haven't been.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you know, and to then come in and be like, okay, so now we're just gonna go to like the 6th or something. It's like, but like, what about the New World and
I have a theory that really holds no ground. So it's just like a personal, like, I think it would be cool if this was the case type thing.
Fair enough.
And it's probably absolutely off entirely, because what we've seen of the differences between the source and the first, there are no duplicates of people, right? No direct duplicates. There are really close ones, but no direct. So I think it would be really cool if we were not from the source, and when Luis Suarez sent us 5 years in the future, he actually just displaced us to a different star. And the reason the time is different is because their time is different between places.
I mean, there's so much metaphysical, you know, like almost planescape type stuff that they could do.
I know that's not what happened, but I think it would be cool.
I mean, yeah, I was with you. Like, when it was like, oh, we're going to the first. I was like, great, cool, don't care. Like, the lore is going to be throwaway because we're just going to leave it. And now I'm like, my home point is the Crystarian. I honestly love the first, and I'm sad that we're leaving it, right? So I think that they could, or you know, I love the first, and I'm sad that we're leaving it. But like, if they were, I'm all for it. You know, like, that would be fun.
I mean, it just makes sense. Like, when you raise the bar to a certain level, right? The idea is always that you want to keep building off of what you've done with momentum, and of course, like, you can't always trump everything. But we have so many obvious vehicles for travel, whether that's Ishtola figuring something out, whether it's just the fact that the Crystal Tower still exists, whether it's like, there's so many different things. I mean, the Asians themselves have a way to do it. Like, there's just so many different connections that make it, even in the raid stuff, Gaia, you talk to Gaia, and Gaia's like, oh yeah, I guess I could go over there if I wanted. So, like, there's a lot of different things that I think they've set up to do that. It would make sense. Of course, I think they also, because it is our starting point, it is, you know, a connection and nostalgia. It is the core of a lot of what we know with the base game and the source itself. And the source itself is very important, and we know that as well. Like, I think that continuing to have stories there makes sense. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the future, at some point, we go to the other shards, you know?
Right.
At least the 13th raid, please, one day, eventually.
I have things to say about
been,
that, but that's a section we haven't covered yet.
But we want to fix it.
Just wait till the Void Quest. Just wait till the Void Quest.
I mean, after news this week, I wouldn't mind them going to the 11th.
You know, I was wondering if maybe they might move forward with that, considering
things. Yeah. So just like a super quick, semi-unrelated news cap. There was a site in Korea, MTN, reporting that Final Fantasy XI Mobile was canceled after 5 years in development. So, you know, and we did have that interview with Yoshida-san. Several years ago at this point, where he, you know, we asked him about, you know, future story arcs, and if, you know, this thing with the Asians, if that was like the 14 story and it would end with 14, or, you know, if we would get new stuff. And he's like, oh no, yeah, like we could totally add new stuff. We could do like you know, Return to Vana'diel. And I'm just like, Yoshida, why would you say that to me?
Don't say that out loud.
Yoshida, well,
I don't
to be fair, this is also the same guy that has like teased me multiple times, so he likes to troll me. So who knows?
If he knows you're gonna be at an event, he's like, I gotta come up with some bullshit to tell Fusion this time.
I mean,
yes, Gaia so much that, and Blitzball.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it's endless. They really could do so many things, and people, I think, whenever we hear that there's a certain plot arc, especially a very good plot arc that's coming to an end, people get worried. And like, rightfully so. You're like, is this the end of everything? Is it ever going to be as good as this? But I mean, 14 has shown a constant development, and we've seen it, I think, just get better and better and better. And although the MSQ, bringing it back around, like, although the MSQ this time, I really waffled on my scoring. I waffled between 2 and 3 because I was like, I didn't hate it, but did I feel like this was the most compelling, moving, interesting story we've had? No. But like, also, is it very much a prologue? You know, it's like, we always have to take into account the narrative arc, right? Because it's not like we're just going to constantly always be at a high point. In order to get those high points, we have to start low. We have to swing up into it. Momentum has to build in certain ways. I do think this one could have been stronger. I think maybe there could, I don't know. It did feel like it wasn't the most interesting sort of tale, but
it didn't make us cry this time.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do that after 5.3, which I literally, I sobbed on myself for hours. You know?
Does anyone have any more tears?
Yeah, we all ran out of tears in 5.3.
Yeah.
There was only one moment in the MSQ that kind of got me, and that was during the gunshot. There was a brief second where I'm like, you know, they've been throwing death flags this entire time. Are they actually gonna do it?
Oh yeah. Gabu got me a little, like,
right.
We knew he came out and she was like swaying. And you're like, did it work? Did it work? She fell over. I don't know. And then she's like, yeah. And then I was like, you're the ugliest, cutest thing I've ever seen, Gabu.
He's so good. He's such a good little boy, though. I just love him.
You know, I think for me, like, and again, right, it's that idea of like, there's some really big lore implications happening here with the tempering, and I think a little bit of that suffers from the fact that it's just been so long since anything else has addressed it. I mean, I think, okay, when was the last time we heard about tempering? And my brain's like, okay, well, there was like that one-off like visit to Gabu, like in Stormblood, and then like Amul Ja Beast Tribe quests, like
the Lakshmi stuff.
Yeah, it was Lakshmi.
Lakshmi, that's true. That's true, Lakshmi. That's right. Yeah, it's.
I think they gave us 2 weapons here that are going to be very useful in the upcoming story, And one of them was at the end of 5.3 when they reminded us that we have the Azim Memory Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they made a pointed effort to show us dropping that and picking it back up when we were running into the tower to get Graha.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing. And the other thing is the tempering, especially when it seems like the towers themselves are tempering people.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting.
We haven't even talked about the towers really, not in depth.
No.
Yeah,
not
and
really.
I
It
did
was
want to make
it was
another.
pretty brief there at the end.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They're
I did wanna make another
everywhere,
point.
and guess what they're doing? By the way,
Yeah,
Lise is dead.
And it's not even that they're just tempering it. It looks like they're giving people the resonant.
Harsh.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because the eye, yeah.
With this, that blue eye, and so it's
I was
really
kind of
interesting.
equating, yeah.
Mhm.
Here's a thought.
Mhm.
We assume that this boy is working towards Zodiark, but is it possible that he's actually trying to power up Hydaelyn?
He did mention Zodiark, but I don't know that he was super clear on his goal with Zodiark. It was he wanted to put Xenos in him or like get him near him somehow.
It's interesting to me because like Zodiark is such a focus when it comes to the Ascians, and like obviously they want to free him, they want to do all this stuff, they want to use him in some kind of way, they want like whether or not they themselves to whatever degree are tempered. Like there's all these different questions around that, but a big question that I have continued to have is, what about Hydaelyn? Like we've had all this stuff with her,
She's taking a nap.
she got tired. She got
Did.
worn out. 2020
She actually is.
on her.
No, that's in the story. That's canon.
Yes,
she is worn out.
No, I know. But it's
Okay.
interesting to me that she has lost so much power. And that, like, when we were last talking to her, she was even having trouble, like, communicating. Which could, I mean, if she is the one who's imprisoned Zodiark, I mean, could she free him? I don't know. It's very interesting that, like, we have all these little threads with the two of them, and they have been this huge focus for so much, and we ourselves have spoken directly to Hydaelyn, which is huge. And yet, like, we have not had more interactions with them. And like the idea that these two forces are not, it's not just one or the other, they are intrinsically tied. And like, I'm really curious to see what they do with Hydaelyn moving forward and with Zodiark, because like we've learned so much about them both, and yet we are the most distant from them than we've ever been in the game. Like the fact that at the start of the game, we are literally like a facilitator for Hydaelyn's will in many ways is something that's easy to forget until Midgard is like, no rock candy for you. I will take them. Like, it's like, there's a lot of stuff there, and I'm curious to see what they do with it. I do like, this is a totally random note, I do like that the towers are visible in the world. I think that's super cool.
Yes. So that was one thing I did want to touch on. Like, it's kind of like a mixed bag, right? You have the idea of this the changing in the game world, right? Which is really cool, but then like there's also the potential for people to miss out on it if they're not playing right now. So it's like, it's cool to see, but at the same time, like, you don't want them to do a lot of it, but like you do, and
won't they just
it's
show
weird...
up when they get to that part of the story? It's
That's
like the difference.
But
no, I mean in general. Like, I imagine that they're always there and they just flick on and off depending, just like the tower in one of the Stormblood zones. Well, it's up and then it's down.
But consider Mordono, consider Idleshire. I think those are just there that way now, right?
Yeah.
But I would think the towers would be more of flick on and off based on what part of the story you're in.
Yeah,
that feels important enough that it would, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, like
we could go look. I have a character that's not through that part of the story yet.
I can tell you that it probably works the same way as when we did Baelsor's Wall and Papalymo imprisoned Shinryu. That appears and then it goes away. Like,
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
It helps that they're off in the distance and they're not something you can like walk onto, or
when they can put them on the horizon or in the skybox, they like the way the weather works in the first.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool thing. I mean, after you get that quest and you see it in Limsa, and then they're like, oh yeah, like they've been popping up everywhere, and I'm like, really? And so I'd like teleported around to different areas. I'm like, they actually did. Cool.
They're preparing us for answers being played in the capital cities again, because it's literally going to be the end of days again. It's literally, I'm telling you, they're going to do it, right? If that theory that's out there that he's trying to reproduce the end of days, it means the end of days, at the end of 1.0.
Confound it, we've
Right.
lost contact with the main host.
Right.
No.
I
No.
It would
saw-
be amazing.
I saw a thing today on Twitter that was like, what's one song that always makes you just deeply emotional? It's Answer every time. I sob.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can't. I try to sing along and I get sad. I'm like,
And I didn't even play 1.0. I was just in the apartment when Zen was
Oh my
playing through the end of 1.0 because I swore Final Fantasy
Don't
XIV
tell my
off.
secret.
Well, no. I was in there and I was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, I remember the build up, and then I watched it go down and I was like, that is a special moment in MMO history. Of course they want to do an echo of it, right? Like, if he's gonna go and destroy the world in the same way with
See,
Bahamut,
now you set it up for me. If it's not that, I'm gonna be disappointed now.
The
I mean,
secret
what
being,
better way?
I'm like playing through and sobbing like a big baby
Right.
to the song. Although I will say, the freaking turn 13 fight with Bahamut makes me hate the beginning of the song because you hear it over and over and over and over. But
I'll
once you
just
get
listen
past
to
a certain
it.
point of it,
It was always such an interesting song because I mean that came out during 1.0, and I still remember like the trailer where it just played over like scenes from like the boat going to Limsa and all, and you're just like, this song feels like it's just all over the place. I wasn't crazy about it, but then that video came out.
Mm-hmm.
you know what else?
Completely changed the song for me.
Still in 13, at the end, like at the very end, when Bahamut's doing Akmorns, it lines up with the song. So it's like, da-na, da-na. It's really great.
I love that. I feel like they haven't done as much of that recently. Maybe
Yes.
I'm just totally wrong, but like when I think about some of those old fights, that one gets me with the blast, and then all like the Garuda one when all stuff happens, she goes now fall, and it's like, oh my god, like I loved the way that they used to sort of
Shiva.
tie.
Yeah.
Oh, Shiva like is so good when they do that because music is so moving, you know.
Mhm.
And I mean, the music that we've gotten obviously has been incredible. I think there's been some really good stuff. I mean, this time around with the MSQ again, it's not like we had a bunch of unique themes. It's not like we had a bunch, you know what I mean? Like we got just like a little bit, but because it was a lot of sort of just generic places we've already been, most of it was sort of scored with our typical music for those zones, right?
Their typical cutscene music, which is so weird as a 1.0 player because I still know that one track as the 1.0 Korthus music, and I love that track. It's a fantastic track, but every time it comes in, it's just like background like cutscene music. I'm like, 1.0 Korthus.
Before there was snow,
right?
Well, I guess we got to give the scores.
I made a
I was
really
gonna say, do we
huge
have
mistake.
anything else that we want to cover on MSQ here before we move into
I'm
dungeon?
ready. I'm ready for the rest.
All right. I gave this one. Let me pull up the. I just had it. Where'd it go?
It's gone.
I gave it a 3. I think it was okay. It didn't make me care as much as I feel like it should have, but I think the ending with the towers, I think it's interesting, and it's not super predictable. From my point of view, so 3.
And these are out of 4, by the way. If you haven't
out of
watched
4.
us do this before.
I did the same. I also went 3. I said, I started it. Oh no, you're fine. I started it 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny for me because I think the difference between a 3 to a 4 is really huge to me.
Right.
But like 2 to 3 also, because 2 to me is very much like I really was not satisfied with this. And so what eventually tipped me into 3 was that I was like, I wasn't dissatisfied, but it wasn't exceptional, you know? Sure. And so I felt like it was good. You know, I said patch 5.3 was a really hard act to follow, which I think is just really, really true. And there's a lot of like large scale lore implications, and I like going back to Limsa, but the story just felt a little bit slower to me, and I didn't feel like it was amazing, but it did what it was supposed to do, and that was fine.
I also went with a 3. For me, it was barely a 3 because I've given patches that I think were much stronger a 3 before. So I didn't want to give it a 2 because, like Rook said, I wasn't dissatisfied with it. The stuff that they gave us was important. It was good. It was underplayed a bit, but still good. So, like, lower end 3.
Lower end 3 is here as well. I think Gabu and Merlewib are the reason that I gave it a 3, and being reminded once again of Death Penalty and Annihilator So the extra point there is from the fact that her guns are named after Vince's.
Yeah.
So FF7 reference gives it a 3.
Yeah. I was the one who gave it a 2. I was between 2 and 3, and being the person, maybe on the podcast, maybe the only person who's not from Limsa. Okay.
I'm Gridania.
I'm old.
Okay.
I'm the
'Cause-
only Lipson.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't care about the pirate story. I just don't. They could have given us more to make me care. I just didn't. So like that whole part.
Oh man.
Yeah, that whole part. I'm just like, you could have just. There's one dude. Like, why do you need to go? I mean, I get that, but they didn't really build it up for me, and that was really it. Until the towers, I was basically sleeping, and that's why.
Okay. So,
Okay, so
that'll put MSQ. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I originally picked Limsa because when we went and watched all those videos, those little like I'm the leader and this is what my country is about. Marva whipped out her pistol and was like, "Screw off! I'm talking right now, right?" I'm like, "You're in charge of me now. Let's do this." So seeing her again was I enjoyed it.
Yeah. That'll put main scenario at 14 out of a max of 20. So we do have some more categories to go for a total possible score out of 100. So we'll see how we go. Next up is the dungeon, which we did talk a little bit about. The idea of with how serious and with how big of a deal tempering was, the dungeon was very comical, and that I guess wasn't really something that really sat in my mind, but yeah, right, it's the idea of, okay, let's fix tempering with like pigs from another planet. But I did think that the dungeon was a lot of fun. If you watch the show, you know that something that I've been kind of wanting to see in battle content is verticality. And Square was like, hey, let's give him what he wants, and so we have some of that in this fight, and I was so happy with the I think it was the second
Justice
boss
in chat
and the
said something
boss.
great. They'll fix tempering when pigs fly.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh boy.
I love the dungeon.
Oh,
I absolutely love the dungeon. I will agree. Anything to do with Matoya already is especially but like the mechanics of the bosses were fun. I don't mind having to run the dungeon multiple times. I said in my written review that this is my favorite Shadowbringers dungeon. I don't think there's another Shadowbringers dungeon I like more than this. As far as actually playing through it.
Right.
Shooting pool with the mud ball in the corner pocket in the first boss. Hold on a second.
Yeah. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, the mechanics were fun. They weren't like they weren't like absolute mind blowing, but they were unique and they made you think in a different way. And I liked that. Like I really enjoy when they put something in that just twists it a little bit so that you're like, oh, wait, hold on. And the idea of playing with momentum in that one fight was great. The idea of playing with verticality in a couple of the other fights also great.
I do not envy the battle team trying to come up with new mechanics.
Right. Yeah.
It's just I can't even imagine attempting to come up with something new. But we saw multiple new things.
Yeah. With
this dungeon, and I thought it was really good. The music I thought was really interesting too. It really played to the kind of the core of the dungeon. And
it was exactly what I asked for.
Right.
And I was like, give me that witchy Matoya theme. And they were like, here you go.
Something I think really important to consider as well. Because you go and you're like, oh, this is like really kind of like goofy and kind of Halloween-y. Remember that with the way that everything got pushed back, this patch originally probably would have landed weeks within in October somewhere. So it really would have just hammered home that kind of Halloween aesthetic. And I think it's thinking that it makes it even better, right, that they planned it that way. There's also like there's little FF1 sprite nods in the library, which are really cool. You have like the pride lava, or maybe it's just a chemical spill, whatever you want to call
the pride lava is amazing. Yeah, I love that. I was not at all upset that they basically just reused the pathway in Somal Hard.
Yep.
Like I
Exactly.
was just like, I don't even care because it's got rainbow lava, so it's great.
Yeah, I mean, but they did it so well. Like, that's the thing. I have been harping lately on, like, please stop reusing assets for the one dungeon you are putting in the game. But,
Mhm.
like, this was a case where I think we had enough new stuff. Like, I really liked a lot of I mean, gosh, even that just room that you first enter with the big cauldron and the books. And, like,
Yeah.
as you're working through all the different areas, like, there's enough new textures and new things that it's great. But it's super cool because they really conscientiously designed it to reflect all of the different sort of crossroads that it represents. So, like, the fact that we are in that Idleshire / Sharlayan kind of thing. So we go through the areas that have these touches of Sharlayan stuff, and we fight enemies. We have a little throwback to
Son of Ziggy.
Son of
Sonny
Ziggy.
Sonny of Ziggy.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
there's
that
even
was so
like
good.
enemies that are, from the other sort of Sharlayan dungeons that we have, like that one, Anti-Tower and Gooble. Then you also get some touches from just the area, like are they called Hopkin?
Yeah.
Hopkin?
Yeah,
think-
Hopkin and Hopkin. Both.
Which are like geographically monsters that inhabit that area. And then as you go down further, because I was thinking about like the forelands and the hinterlands, I mean, it is geographically the same. So if you're getting to the underbelly to have this, like, the cave system down there, it made sense for me. I was like,
Right.
this is the same base, like, it's the same land, and we've had enough other new stuff in this dungeon that I don't feel like this is them just being like, we'll get really crafty and reuse some stuff, It felt appropriate. It felt like a good way to cohesively tie it together. And I thought the dungeon was really fun. I loved it. I think my only complaint was that for an expert roulette dungeon, it didn't quite feel like the difficulty, or like even the mobs didn't hit quite as hard. But it's so fun.
Yeah, I don't care. I honestly don't even care that it's the bosses are simple. The normally when you go from into a raid patch, everything hits a little harder because you're getting gear upgrades. Not the case with this one, but I don't care. It was really fun. Rook, listening to you make all these connections about things that are significant in the area and in the content of we're dealing with, I realized the gear that we get is the Dunmeg dungeon gear. So we're making a Fey creature.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense that we're getting the Fey dungeon armor in a dyeable version also. And
Yeah.
by the way, very happy about that. That was one of the only pieces of archer gear that I liked from this particular expansion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice. Oh, God.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I agree with literally all of this. Like, the thing that the thing that I don't like is the difficulty and the format. Like go over to this wing, come back, go over to that wing, and come back. It's fine. I just think that I don't know if that's the best way to do it. To me, it just seems like a weird romp that, like, I don't know. It just didn't feel consistent to me.
I was really expecting a boss fight at the kiln.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Everybody's like, all right, where is it? Oh,
Yeah.
we're leaving. Okay.
I mean, that's not huge, but to me, like, that format matters when you're going to do it over and over and over again. Like, I could see myself getting really tired of doing
it. It
that.
reminds me a little bit of, was it Halatali?
Yeah,
right, where you go back and forth a little bit, and I have mixed feelings, right? Because in one part, it's kind of weird with the flow, where it's like, okay, you got to click on, and we had this with the last dungeon too. It's like, okay, now here's an area, now here's a portal, now go to another area, and here's a portal,
right?
But it also offers a little bit more variance in setting, right? So it's like, oh yeah, all right,
it's
it really depends on personal taste if you like that and how it kind of breaks up the dungeon. I thought it was fine.
I think heard. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that the biggest things for me in this dungeon were just the new mechanics. Difficulty aside, I think if you wanted a piece of content to be easier in a level cap increase patch, it would be the dungeon, especially with how tied they are with the MSQ now.
I have heard that some people think that the stuff that's being brewed in Rainbow Lava Land is Fantasia. I didn't necessarily pick up on any of those clues, but someone told me that it's mentioned vaguely somewhere.
I believe it.
Like
That'd be fun.
Yeah, Matoya says, like, you're gonna go on a journey through a Fantasia or
Mhm.
into where Fantasia is created or something vague like that. And some people are going, that's what Fantasias look like. They're rainbow. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We're running through a Fantasia puddle.
I mean, as
Yeah.
Ivory says in the chat, it may also be, or it might be everything, right? It might be that they are bringing Fantasia and that it's also a nod to Fantasia and the Sorcerer's Apprentice,
Right.
which I think obviously has like a ton, like there's so much inspiration in the
Mhm.
musical theme, and I love
It
it,
has
and
the
I
brooms.
eat it up. Yes, and the brooms, like it's just so good, and it's interesting because the discussion about whether or not I think the cutesy or comical sort of tone matches with something as serious as curing tempering, right?
Yeah.
It's tough because I do think that I have seen, and especially in like Final Fantasy, right, where we have a race like Moogles, where we have all of these touches that are meant to play into the whimsy of fantasy, right? These fun, silly little things. I do think that you can still have something be very serious, but have like a flying pig that's curing.
Right.
I do think that. I don't necessarily think that just because it has that slight humor, it can't be serious.
Mhm.
However, I do think that you have to almost play into the archetypes of a creature like that to some degree to really have an impactful feeling, right? Like if something is childish, it carries an innocence with it. So like emotionally, you can tap into that innocence of a creature. And I don't know like 100% if I really do think that the Porksies really do it for me as far as like, you know, they kind of ruin some of the mood, but I don't necessarily think that's just because they're whimsical. You know, like I think it
Right.
could be
Yeah.
done well. And I like this dungeon and its whimsy because I do think there is a place for whimsy in the
Definitely.
world of Final Fantasy.
Sure.
When I was initially running this dungeon, I was hungry and everybody around me kept talking about food. And then I got to the last boss, and every single ability is about food. And I'm
Yep.
just like, why?
Torture.
Yeah.
I want. Oh, you go ahead.
I was just going to say I wanted to go back to what Ivory also mentioned in chat about the nod to Matoya's voice actor. I do
Yeah.
think that Matoya's new voice actor did an amazing job.
Yes.
And if there's something in this patch of story that actually got to me was like, you know, learning after the fact of like that little tribute to her that was there, because after knowing what that was, I teared up. Yeah.
Right. You know, and I was gonna mention doing this dungeon with trusts, right? I don't know if everyone has done that yet, but you know, I always do the dungeon when it comes out main story quest first with trusts, and I brought Y'shtola in. And there's so much extra, right? Like the second boss, she made it. That's an experiment of hers that went kind of wrong, and Matoya's like, yeah, you remember that thing? Yeah, that was
Fight
your
it.
mistake. Yeah. There's
That's
like
really
pillars.
cool.
There are pillars around that look like her head. There's so many little extra bits that people have found in this little dungeon. It's great.
That's cool.
You know, like I think it was her and I went in with Alphino, and like he's like giving her a little bit of sass because he's like, oh yeah, now I can sass you because Matoya's here, you know. And she's
I was
sassy.
laughing so hard during that one
Yeah.
cutscene where Alphina's like, oh yeah, she totally took your name on the first, and everyone's like, oh my god, why would you say that?
Yeah. How could you throw her under the bus like that?
Oh,
And then Matoya makes that like that snide comment about it like later, like messing with Y'shtola. It was so good.
Yeah, with Y'shtola as a trust, like every once in a while there'd be just one little pop-up bubble text, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she hates this. She hates being in here.
That's where the good stuff is. Yeah, it's that bubble text.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we give the numbers out for the dungeon?
It's fun. It's real fun. It's the best one.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, a lot of us liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. This felt like if we are only going to get one dungeon per patch, this was a good one. And that's really what I'm hoping for from all of our dungeons. You know, like if we've really condensed it down to one per patch, dungeons, I know some people don't care about them. They're some of my favorite content. Like I really love the dungeons. I think they are so fun. I think they're a great way to punctuate the story with some adventure. I love that now with Trust you get additional narrative and little details. Like there's a lot of great stuff in them. They're always a delight for me to play, and this one really felt like, yes, good, yes, I will be happy even if it's just this one. So
All right, so I gave Dungeon a 4.
4. Also a 4.
4 Matoyas out of 4.
Oh no.
Don't worry.
This is awkward now.
Oh god. The thing
Don't
is,
worry.
while we were talking about it, I was like, I should have given it a 4 though. I gave it a 3. It's but like a high 3. Like this is the thing. MSQ was low 3 for me, and Dungeon was high 3 for me. I think that one step further would have been that little bit of extra difficulty, because as a healer, I really love having to clench my butt when we get into your expert roulette dungeon, and I'm trying to figure out how I can heal the tank through it while they try to wall-to-wall pull the whole thing.
Right.
So like that alone notched it down for me, but honestly, talking about it, were I to go back, I might have given it a 4. I don't know. Ugh. I was
right between 3 and 4 with you, and I ended up at 3 as well, and it was difficulty and format, and that was it. That was really it. I don't want to keep doing it. I don't want to do it over and over again. And to me, that's a big part of the dungeon, right?
Absolutely.
You're gonna do it for a whole patch until you have all the tomes that you need, of course.
I respect your decisions.
Right. It was so close.
Yeah. All right. So that puts Dungeon at an 18 out of 20.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
No score to scoff at.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to.
And this is honestly why I think that dungeons should be separate from the MSQ, because it's because stuff like this happens where we're like, the dungeon was great.
That's true. Was all right. I think as we and this is something new that we've been doing. I mean, our first patch review was 4.5, and this is going to be the first full expansion that we've done this with. So maybe going into 6.0, we'll concrete the categories a little bit more. We'll see. Right. We'll see what happens. The problem is. Yes, there's a format, but that format has changed a little bit too.
We get so much stuff too. Sometimes you just gotta shuffle.
It's hard. So we'll see. Okay, so that's gonna take us into the trial.
So good.
He's so good.
This was interesting. I thought that first off, I'm glad it was a trial. I'm glad that this story was another 8-man and not like a weird little solo mech thing that you can fly.
Although the warrior fight was pretty sad that we didn't get into the G warrior. Did you catch that? We were pretty sad.
I
What do you mean it's worked?
I will say, and I'll probably bring this up again when we get to raid. I appreciate when the developers try something new. It doesn't always work, but I appreciate that they try. G Warrior was something that maybe for me. Some people liked it. I wasn't crazy about it.
I can't think of a single MMO that has actually pulled off a vehicle fight that's been fun.
I don't fair. Yeah.
I feel like Praetorium. The first time you do Praetorium is actually pretty fun.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, but like as far as like like trial or raid or like even like when World of Warcraft had you in the Oculus like on Dragonback, like
nobody wanted to do it.
Nobody wanted to like I played this game to play the character I made.
Right.
The little role playing solo duties are fun. But the Sapphire just like there felt like there was no challenge to it. Like it was just a trial error of I pushed this button at this time.
Right. Yeah. It was just I love Gundam. I love mechs. We got into a mech. It's not good. It just wasn't fun.
Everything around it was cool except for the actual.
Right.
See, I really loved the Gundam element.
Yeah.
But partially too here because I'm a role player, and it just so happened that the first character that I took through it, in my mind, I've always been like, "Oh yeah, she climbed in a Gundam," and I kept hoping because like I was like, "Man, it'd be so cool if some point she got to pilot like an Ultima weapon or because she's got like these Allegan ties and things." So for me, it was like my dreams are coming true. But the actual instance itself. Like, the big problem is that this is not a game developed to be a mecha fighter. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, we have this thing, and Fusion has brought this up time and time again. I'm in a robot that can hover over the water, but I cannot fly?
Well, that's the thing, is it's a flying robot.
Right.
But only if you're right on the water.
Like, and that I think is the big problem. Like, it could have been super fun, but they are working with the mechanics and the game that they have designed, which is that you have a person and you run around and you have like buttons that you hit and that's what you do and you're ground bound. Like, you know, unless they had created some kind of entire other battle system.
If like Stormblood had us fighting underwater, they could have tweaked it and made it work.
Sure.
But we don't. So therefore,
I'm glad we don't, honestly.
Flying water grounded robot.
No, thank you on the underwater combat. No, thank you.
Yeah. So, the fight itself, you know, for Emerald,
no.
You didn't like it?
No, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
That's why I wanted to bring up Sapphire. Like That's why I wanted to bring up Sapphire, because I felt like I've felt so disappointed with these past two fights. I mean, Ruby wasn't even like all that incredibly inspired of a fight either. I love Sorrow Warlet for the story, but like the fights are feeling kind of weak.
When I'm over here going so good, I'm mostly talking about the story.
That's the thing, and I mean we'll get to this, but I mean Ruby Weapon, at least for me, the fight itself, okay, but at least that transition made it one of the most memorable. Like I was like, holy cow, I don't know if I've been in a trial before and like screamed at it.
Right. Whenever I get a roulette and I see that somebody's new in that fight, I just go, oh yes. I love seeing the reaction.
I loved that. That was so good. But you cannot do that every time because it is a surprise factor. And when you have surprise people, that's it. Like that's the end. So like it has been really hard, and especially with these extra patches, we've gotten a ton of craft and gathering content, which is something that I've talked a lot about. I'm not a big crafter gatherer. And our PvP offerings, like I think because they just didn't anticipate, nobody did, a global pandemic this year, right? So we had like all this new sort of crafting and gathering kind of stuff and all these new things. And then there was this huge drought. And then we had Sapphire. And I was like, I just really would like some kind of PvE that I could do something. Please. And like we had to wait ages and ages. And like now Emerald, I mean, I rated this category incredibly high for reasons that we'll get into shortly with the story. The fight itself, I liked the music in the second half. I thought it was fine. But did this inspire my imagination the way that even the Warring Triad did, where each fight had something kind of new and interesting in the theme and all the different elements? I was like, holy cow, what am I going to see when I step foot in this arena? And what are they going to do to subvert my expectations? No, it didn't. No.
Yeah. I mean, even the gosh, what did they call the Stormblood series? Like the Four Lords? Like even then, like you had a lot more interesting things. Like, you know, Bayaka was a bullet hell. Zuzaku had you playing like DDR. These are just like dodge things and okay. But you know, the one thing I do want to say and give credit for is that I thought that the fight was fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard, but you know, I do a lot of this stuff with my wife, and she's not a hardcore gamer by any means. But the fact that like you go into Emerald Weapon and then there's that combination of mechanics where it spins, but then you have like the kind of circular quake things and stuff at the same time. I mean, both of us were like, uh-oh, we're going to get hit by this, but we didn't. And you know, you think it's going to be super hard, but then it ends up not being it. And it just, it was fun because of that. And so I think it was really fun. It wasn't hard, right? But again, if you want to have that challenge, there are the extreme modes, right? And you know, the same idea with the dungeon, right? If you're going to have it be, you know, something be a little easier on a level cap boosting patch, it's going to be the easier modes of stuff or the story based stuff.
The extreme mode wasn't hard either.
You just haven't.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to jump into extreme yet.
No, they're very similar, and I would say the extreme mode is not challenging, but also still pretty fun, with the exception of maybe the sword dropping mechanic.
Right.
Okay.
I think that the extreme brings that level of flash, because to me, the thing that it's missing, because you think back to Stormblood, and no matter how you feel about the Four Lords, it was flashy. Like, most of the primals in Stormblood were super flashy, too. Think Lakshmi, think Susano, right? Super flashy, big effects. And then we have these two, who are relying on the Oversoul, right? It's like, that's the flash of the battle. Otherwise, it's like, I'm in a Garlean hangar You know, like cool,
Yeah.
and I'm fighting Emerald Weapon, or you know, that I've seen before in 7, and these are the kind of abilities it had in 7, kind of, not really. So it's like they're missing that flash, I think, in these really, I don't know, they just don't have the same pizzazz as the previous Trials had.
To me, the coolest visual things were when you realize the first time that laser that's going in a circle is making the arena smaller, because the outside just falls off. Both hilarious and kind of cool. And then when you get to the Oversoul part, and the Gaius Oversoul is gold, just like in Praetorium. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it was appropriate, especially for the surrounding story, to have the face off with Gaius's legacy, right? Like, it makes sense to me. And going to like the battlefield, like I thought the transition and stuff was cool. I actually did also like that mechanic where it's the lines of him, and like you have to sidestep into the openings. Not necessarily because, I mean, like the mechanic, you figure it out, like you know what's happening. But it did give me this sense of almost facing the Garlean Legion, right? That it's not just Gaius, it is Gaius and the people that he led. And I
Gaius
liked
and 6
that.
floating hands.
Yeah, like I liked that kind of feeling, because I did feel like, well, if we're just going to have Gaius in the middle of the arena and we're not going to have a meteor dropping down behind us and all the music going crazy, like I was like, this at least gives me something that I feel kind of, you know, connected to.
It reminds you he was a general.
Right.
Yeah, and I liked that. I thought all of that was good. But really, for me, the trial itself is not what stole the show for me on this one. It was the story of the weapon this time.
It's all about the story. I feel like the transition makes the trial fight too long. That's one of the things I think. That transition is pretty long.
It is long.
And and you know, my real attachment to this is of course the story, but also I'm just fascinated with the idea of Werlin as a place. So seeing that is the backdrop for the second phase was also good for me.
That sort of transportation to it, like that's really cool. I'm glad that they added that to the Oversoul, because if it was just Gaius in that hangar, like come on, you know.
Yeah, I was so captivated by the story, and this was one of the only pieces of 5.4 content that I played live, because I recorded everything else off stream. And I was like, oh, it's just like the weapon stuff, so I'm just gonna like play it and voice it, and this will be great. And I actually I liked this more than the main story quest, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, one, that it wasn't voiced, because like I mean, they have limited resources, and I totally know that, right? But seeing how all out they went, especially with those post cutscenes, with the torture that we witnessed, with the lines, the children, like I said this last week, but they've obviously upgraded some of what they're doing with how they can realize graphics and visuals, and they talked about this somewhat with Shadowbringers, and we saw more of it with some of the character interactions and even some of Graha's animations and things like that. It's just so good. And it was so funny to me that out of everything, and this is also partly what makes me think that this storyline is going to tie into our MSQ.
I hope so.
We saw more unique animations and a truly visceral, gruesome thing on a scale that we haven't seen in this game before. Like, we hear about it all the time, it fades to black. We hear about a scream, it fades to black. But I could not believe when they didn't cut away.
Right.
And they showed these children holding these burning sticks. I lost my mind. And like it's just so well done. Like his dialogue is incredible. And I was saying this last week, but like when I voiced him, I don't know why, but like when I first started doing it, I started giving him this like very high, like a higher sort of softer, almost like you're talking to children kind of voice. And it wasn't until we really came into this cutscene that when I was acting as him, right? And then when he gets angry, I would drop it and it'd be nasty. And like in this scene, doing that was so viscerally uncomfortable to me, because his writing is fantastic. The way he talks to these children as if they are his own, as if he's grooming them, as if they are beholden to him. And then he forces them to do these horrific things. Like, it's so brilliant. And I mean, like, honestly, like, I think if they had gotten a phenomenal voice actor in there, it would have been even 100 times more chilling than it already is.
And then at the end, too, he does that, like, that little, like, that little clapping, and then he's like, hey kids, you want to go see something cool? Like, the only way I can think to describe this ending scene is like, it's just so fucked up. And that's what makes this character so good.
I could not, like, I was reading the dialogue out loud on stream, and I had a few content warnings in my chat, like, you know, because they didn't want to spoil, but they did want to let me know that the heavy stuff was coming up, and I appreciate having that. But like, even those warnings could not touch on how heavy that content was. And when we got to burn out the bad, I could not read that out loud.
Right.
I was like, I can't voice out this part. This is incredibly, like, despicable, and I love the writing here. Like, this is, I'm just like, okay, so I'm not gonna make a big show of this, but I'm gonna let you see the screen and see this, because I couldn't do it. But man, if they had a voice actor in there,
it's like, I think
they've talked about the fact that Guardians take children and brainwash them. They take children from every place that they conquer and they brainwash them, and we finally saw it. That is 100% brainwashing children, and that is freaky.
I think, like, as much as everybody, you know, praises Emmett Selk as a villain, right? He's doing it for his reasons. You know what I mean? Like, there's some really good humanity and stuff there. As a villain that's a villain, I think Milkman is the best bad guy in 14.
That said, Emmett Selk is the one who built the society.
This is true.
True.
Yeah. But this is what makes this character so incredible. Like, I could nerd about just this one scene for a million years. Like, it's what makes this character so fascinating and also incredibly bold. Like, doing this in the game was bold. I never knew coming out of Stormblood, because they kind of shied away. It was a very nationalistic story, right? Like, we are going to retake the homeland, patriotic theme song. And when you're dealing with it, I mean, like, you really are dealing with these incredibly complex and awful things. Like, what does it mean to be raised in a society that is a supremacist society? What does it mean to live under the legacy of being oppressed and invaded? Like, all of these different things have so many different facets. And I've even talked to friends who are from Germany. And like, this is, I'm not going to go too much into this, but like, talking about being a young person growing up in the face of something like that, it's an incredibly complex thing. And I never thought that they were going to actually hit it head on. I thought Fordola and Yotsu were the most we were probably going to get. And they were incredible for what they did. And I absolutely adore them. But here we have seen in the weapons them explore the things that were the undercurrent of Stormblood all along. Gaius is facing himself. And this man who in many ways is a child, who's been raised in this society to always fight for title and rank, and who resents everything that's ever been taken away from him, who wants to be like this icon that he's idealizing, who was this legend, who has now abandoned his people. Like, it's incredible. And he as a character has so many layers, just from like his theatricality to, I mean, even like his hairstyle, is kind of boyish haircut that they have him in. All of these different things that are complex layers with him in this society that, yes, has been very militant, has been raised to be supremacists, that has been, it's ballsy. Like, I just have to be honest. Like, that scene was phenomenal. And that, like, those scenes alone, I didn't even care about the fight.
And
like,
then you even have that part afterwards too. Like, we haven't even talked about them testing the diamond
Would
weapon.
you guys say that the milkman shakes you down to your bones?
Get out.
Fusion, I saw you look over at the stream deck to see if you had an eject button. I saw that.
Luke's gone. We lost him.
I can go.
He's done.
But, like, you know.
He's good. Yeah, that's it.
Y'all good? I'm out.
Diamond is a whole thing.
Diamond,
such a bad dude. Like, so they have this family. It's the husband, the wife, and like their kid. And so, like, the dad is like the test pilot for Oversoul. Obviously, we know as the player this isn't gonna end well, but by doing this, you know, Milkman says, I'll let the wife and the kid go if you do this. Things go as we expect, and then he pulls the mom in as the next pilot. You're just like, dude, like, this guy, like, it's just like these are such horrible things, but I love that for the first time in a long, like, I can't remember ever hating a villain so much in this game.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to go after him. I honestly can't.
Yeah.
And another instance of Xenos being beyond control here.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
You're definitely right.
That was a great insight that you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
I had never thought about that. And you know,
very interesting.
We keep saying that this is a parallel to Gundam because, you know, it is. And this is one of the things about Gundam that you don't see on the surface is there's some really dag nasty evil, like, just in most of the series, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's mech and it's cool and whatever, things happen. Some of them get really, really dark, like this guy, right? There's instances of, you know, child soldiers and things like that. And the people who drive them and the societies that drive them too. So it's even more to me kind of, I don't know, it feels more like Gundam that I remember, you know. So I think, I don't know, I kind of hope we don't kill him. I kind of hope he goes into the next, if we're going to Garlemald, I want him to be there.
I really want this stuff to intersect with MSQ in a big way. I don't want this just to be a side thing. I really want to see this guy have a bigger impact.
They need a new leader.
They do.
I wanted to say this about both this story and the Void quests. I really hope that these two quest lines don't remain side stories.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me, right? We've touched on this, and I think a lot of people have brought this up too in the community. Like the fact that Verliet has entire new assets, like that's not usually something that they just do if they're not like already making zones for a new, you know what I mean? So like the fact that we have unique architecture, which of course takes concept artists, takes design teams, then you realize that in the game it takes all this different stuff. It really does make me think, and we've had this mention in the MSQ and things about the unrest in the provinces and all of this sort of stuff, right? I always thought that we were going to be sort of facing Garlemald as a nation with a leader heading it. But I think we are going to instead be almost more dealing with just the aftermath that is Garlemald, you know? Like, and I mean, we'll see as we get into it, but something I also wanted to mention with this one, I think they did a great job with the children, not the children, but like the actual characters that are piloting. Because in the past, I've kind of been like, I don't know if I really think that they're, like, I don't know if I think their motivation is good. I don't understand. But this time I thought, like, it hit home for me. I thought they did some other great supporting things with the discussion even about the young woman who is, like, part Garlean, who, you know, was never accepted really by either people. Like, all of that stuff is so good.
They even went back and mentioned Livia and
Cotton.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you right now that after hitting us with the torture and everything and being so angry at this horrible villain, the next quest they do is have to stand and nod and smile to somebody who is telling you about how important all these people in her life were, and you killed each and every one of them.
Yep.
It's like
that was
yeah.
It's like a better version of the Elidibus explanation.
People were so low on these orphans, you know, they were just color-coded Gundam pilots, right? They're just mecha pilots. Who cares? They're throwaway. They're doing this for no reason. And now you know.
Yeah, and they have that mention with Livia. I hope that's just a little bit of groundwork to just kind of come back and maybe not, you know, take that one scene from 2.0 and make it like infinitely less creepy. Right, because that's always been the thing. As soon as we had Ruby Weapon, you're like, oh yeah, these are like the orphans and stuff. And you're like, wait, like Gaius was a dad to Livia, but
as much as in a perfect world, I would like that. I also am kind of against it because we need examples of how he's a bad guy, and that's a pretty solid one.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, right? This is so
But they've
complex
been
and
raising
so
him up
interesting.
so much, though. Like, it would be
Yeah.
so weird
I
to then
disagree.
come back and...
I
I think
disagree.
that they undermined him this one. I think that they
Okay.
really, because we have like in that fight, right, where he's facing again his own legacy, we have this man who is trying to live in his shadow, who is in theory doing what he also did to other children. Although I think from what we know about Gaius, right, like I don't believe he, as he himself has said too, that he like physically abused like his charges.
Gaius
and
wasn't
things,
full
right?
on batshit. Yeah.
Yes, but like, but when you think about it, I mean, he was part of a system that, like we talked about, facilitates this at its worst, and like that is something that I think, like all of these things. Zen, I loved what you said last week during our spoilers. You said, I think that they said more with Gaius in the silences this time than they did with any of his words. And I completely agree, because like there were a few times, especially like in that sequence where, yes, you're confronting the fact that you've killed all these people that mattered. And I was yelling in the background, like, why can't I just choose not to kill them?
Right.
Like, you know, but like, there were several moments where Gaius was just silent and they just showed you his face. And like in those moments, I went, with the kind of character he is and the kind of man that he is, I don't think he would say anything, but I think that what he isn't saying says it all. Right. And it's like,
I don't think he can pretend that this is a surprise to him anymore.
Right.
Like every time that this sort of stuff has come up with him, like between basically when we got to know him as the Shadow Hunter forward, every time that something that Garlemald was doing that was really, really questionable, he was surprised by it. Like, oh, the Emperor was doing that. Like, and I'm like, guys, there's no way you moved up that high in that society and had no clue what was going on there.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because we see that one scene, right, where they kill Varus, right? He's still, even with everything that's gone, he is still very loyal to that throne.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how the rest of this plays out. But I do think there's like, this has to come back into the MSQ somehow for the reason Brooke brought up. Like, Turncliffe is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I love hanging out in Turncliffe. Very Scala Ed Kylum. And I love Kingdom Hearts. So
a lot of people refer to this as a redemption arc for Gaius, and I completely disagree. We have seen him look back on things he has done with regret, and up until now they've mostly been about not being able to help Mother Garlemald. The fact that he screwed up has screwed over his home, that he still, like we see with Varys, like Fusion just said, Garlemald's still his home. He is still loyal to Garlemald. And I think in this particular section of the Werlit storyline, where he sees what happened to these children, that you can tell he, on some level, cares about. That's a level of regret that's new. And it has nothing to do with Garlemald and that he wasn't able to serve Garlemald. He's regretful that he did this to these children.
You know, and that's part of the Oversoul and, you know, him coming out, but then his mechanics being his soldiers. That's what Gaius thought to himself, you know, like he thought, I am raising this regiment. These are my people. I will make sure that they are good, and they will empower me to take over, you know, what I needed to do. So, like, to me, like, his powers being the soldiers, and then him seeing what that has done to those soldiers is really impactful. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. I love it. I think there is a complexity to storytelling here that is so fascinating, and it's so worth digging into. I really don't know. Part of me feels as though they are positioning him to be a future leader of Garlemald, but it is really fascinating to me. Like, if we compare this to something like Emmerich with Ishgard, right? Right. Emmerich is from the get-go a good boy. He's beautiful. He's so good to look at, but also he's good inside. And like, you know, he's like, I'm a good shiny boy who's going to do good things in this world. And then he confronts the fact that, like, the system and his lineage and his father and like these things are not good, and he kind of gets brought down by them. And yet he is optimistic about leading Ishgard's future, even though they also have a history of bloodshed, right? Gaius is almost the reverse in that he has been a facilitator of this violence. He has been a part of this system. He has been blinded by his pride for his nation. He has been like all of these things about him, like you said, Zen, it's like I don't necessarily think he has a redemption arc. I do think it's an arc of confronting exactly what his legacy has meant. And it makes me wonder if, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Garlemald, but if we follow the path that we've sort of been seeing with other nations where it's like, and now we have an iconic leader, I can't help but wonder if they're going to put Gaius in that seat. I don't know, but at the same time, I don't think that it will be because he is redeemed and suddenly all his crimes are, you know, like, I feel it will be a really hard earned, like, we cannot repeat these mistakes again, you know? Which is a new thing for us to see in this game, and I really hope they keep that nuance and we don't tip into like, but now I'm a good boy. Like I really hope they keep the nuance.
Well, and keep in mind too, we also have another character that we really haven't seen yet either. Who's in charge of? I want to say it was the third.
Oh yeah, they mentioned that.
You know, that's kind of like Garlean Civil War thing. So I mean, we might see them at some point as well. I as much as I've enjoyed Gaius coming back, I would not be surprised if Sorrow of Warlit ends with his death.
I mean,
after everything that's happened, because I also can't
I would see it
imagine,
this time.
I can't imagine Gaius leading Garlemald.
No,
I don't think he would want that.
He also he also still has some very strong beliefs that still put him in opposition with the Eorzean alliance.
Oh,
definitely.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No.
No. Oh, we see. There's a line he says about he always thought that it was the strong that needed to lead the weak, and he still feels that way, but in a different way. So I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah, that's actually kind of what I wanted to touch on there is from my standpoint of obviously not knowing where this game is going, thinking what happens if we get a good ending with Garlemald? Like, what is our next wall to throw ourselves up against? Where does this take us? You know, and I just can't imagine Garlemald also being like, yep, and now we're also joining the collected world of Hydaelyn good guys force. And I think Gaius would be more willing to work with us than what Nerva, I guess is the name.
Nerva.
Yeah, Nerva. So I don't think it's gonna be Gaius.
I'm curious too about the leader. Oh, who's the person that's leading the sort of unusual regiment in Boja?
Can't remember.
I forget the name, but I mean, we could potentially also end up with maybe like a good Garlemald, but then Gabranth's new nation, right? So that's definitely something that's I mean, ultimately there was another guy right there in Boja, but he serves.
Yes, that's what I was referring to. Like, because he has this vision, right? And they did do some interesting things, I think, with the latest Boja stuff, where some of that vision didn't sound so bad.
Right.
And you know, I'm kind of like, okay, well, he wants equality, and she's talking about this, but they're set up as villains. But you know, is this the future or not? I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with Garlemald exactly. I don't think every faction will ever agree completely, but I mean, they are a people, and they are a people that are extremely diverse at this point because of the children and people, and you know, that have been brought into this empire. Something will have to be done, and whether they fragment into multiple nations or
I mean, 6.0 could just be a bunch of Garlemald territories and just the Civil War, like, for all we know. I mean, it's been going on for a while now, but you know, we do have, you know, we've got Nerva, we've got Milkman, we've got Gaius, we've got Noah. You know, I mean,
we've got that party with Maximus.
Yeah, Maximus.
Yep.
You know,
I don't know how much of the Popularis are left. They were mostly I remember something about hearing them then getting like wiped out.
Yeah, only ones that weren't there are alive at this point, we've heard.
Yeah.
you know, and
It'll be
I almost
interesting.
hesitate to use the word, but it's kind of like the balkanization of Garlemald, breaking into smaller pieces that may or may not be at war with each other that we now have to navigate. And then some of them are still like, no, screw you guys. Like, we don't care. Maybe they're in the minority, but I would
if
love
we come
to
up
see
with 5 factions, we come up with 5 zones. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right?
I mean, I've been saying
Are you
for
sure
a
you're
while
not a
the
good,
idea of, you know, we could get like a conquest system like 11 had, but
Right.
with Garlemald, and like that would be cool. That would be something
I mean,
new.
that would be
And
so cool.
It would be very exciting to
But who
be the
knows?
Warrior of Light and the Eorzean Alliance navigating that really treacherous kind of political environment. That would be cool.
I think that'd be super neat. And I mean, as for what goes on beyond that, I mean, we do have this whole Fandaniel Xenos shenanigan that's happening.
Mm.
We have all these other open doors that have sort of been cracked as far as, I mean, the other shards and all sorts of different things, right? We have the larger Heidel and Zodiark issue, which we know should be coming to a head.
Yeah.
So
be.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know. There's a lot that they can do with this. And it really does feel like they've been steering more towards that Civil War aspect than I ever expected when we first started.
I
the
would
path.
love for them to wrap up Fandaniel and Xenos with the next patch, or the part 2 of it, and then whatever happens there affects whatever going forward. You know, especially since technically, right, Xenos is the one at the top of the Garlemald chain, right? But we know he doesn't care about that anymore. So if he's gone, then maybe that escalates the conflict of the Civil War, and then we go, I don't speculation. We could do this all day. Let's
I mean, I just want to throw this out really fast. The obvious, absolute best thing that could possibly happen would be that, what's the name of the Garlean that always hangs out with Emmerich? She has
Lucia.
Lucia.
Yeah.
Lucia is secretly, she's blonde. She's secretly a part of the royal lineage, and then she ascends and becomes Garlemald's ruler because she's cool. I love her. Give me more women in power.
Yeah, please.
With Livia's sister, right? So
yeah,
yeah,
it is
I think
Livia's
so.
sister.
Oh right, oh right, interesting.
They could bring her into Whirlit somehow.
See that.
I mean,
man.
I would be so surprised if she doesn't show up and we're doing stuff in Garlemald. Like,
yeah, true.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Puka?
Definitely.
I'm wondering now about the relationship between Lucia and Gaius.
I was thinking that same thing. Were they brought up in the orphanage together, or like what happened there? Yeah.
Yeah, that actually immediately, like, I've like that I have questions now. I hope we see more of Lucia.
I'm kind of surprised that I haven't had that thought before, but yeah, that's definitely like a big like, hey,
Time to poke back through Heavensward.
Yeah, she's always been, to me, she's always been one of those like open door question marks from Heavensward, because like with all the stuff they've set up now, just kind of the same way that oh gosh, I'm so bad at names right now. My brain is completely flown out the window. Ninja, who is really devoted, Yugiri. Like just like they kind of set her up early on to then play a role with the races and things that happened later. I feel as though Lucia has always been a possibility. It has surprised me that they haven't brought her in sooner, to be honest.
And it's interesting talking about Lucia. It reminds me when they introduced her back in 2.4, 2.5 maybe. I just remember like the first time she showed up, you know, she's in that little room with like Haurchefant, and people were like going in and like angling their camera, and they're like, that's a third eye. She's Garlean. Why? Right? So it's that little, just like, we'll just leave this little breadcrumb here. Maybe we'll come back and bake a loaf of bread out of it. We'll see what happens.
Coughs in chat has mentioned wondering what the final sibling will be, the final pilot. Yeah, it does seem like they're setting it up so that the daughter is going to try to pilot it instead or something, right?
I mean, Gundam is not Gundam without a orphan stealing a Gundam, right? At some point.
We brought this up last week, and I'm really curious if in the next, or the sort of final culmination we get of this, if we'll see more of a direct tribute to Mighty, if you will. Because we talked a little bit about the blog post, the developer's blog post that got put up, and about how Yoshida-san and Mighty bonded over Gundam. And I'm really wondering, and I mean, it'll make me sob like a baby. But
I'm just a little worked up just even thinking about it.
Yeah, just thinking about it. Like, actually watching people catch up on Whirlit and having to go through Sapphire that they hadn't done it yet. After reading that blog post,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We'll see. Was there anything else?
I don't think so.
Not with that. Like the story carries that quest chain for me, like by far.
For sure. I was
Right.
when we got that first bunch, I definitely was like, not interested, boring, don't like it, color-coded children, like Charles said. And now I'm like, this is the best story. How'd this happen?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go numbers then. I gave this a 4. The fight, you know, it's a combination, right? It's the trial and the story surrounding the trial. The fight was okay, but the story and just the villain is just the villain alone is a 4.
Right.
Like, just amazing, absolutely amazing, terrible person, and I love it.
Yeah. Everything Fusion just said, 4. It's really good. I'm thoroughly enjoying this plot in ways that I did not.
That look on Pook's face, he knows where this is going.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like talking about it actually kind of makes me want to change my score because I feel like the story carried even harder. But because the story was the only part of it I enjoyed, I gave it a 2.
I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense, though.
That's fair.
That's fair.
That's
fair.
That's
go
totally
with
fair.
your gut. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I give it a 4, which is surprising. Like, you know what I mean? Because I will agree, Pook. I absolutely agree with you. I always look forward to the primal fights, and I have been kind of underwhelmed with what we've gotten with the weapons. I mean, I'll just be totally honest. From that point alone, I probably would have rated like you did, but from a standpoint of somebody who just is so passionate about characters and narrative, and I went to acting school. I was an actor. No, I personally found that those beats, the moments that they worked in with the story, it was so incredibly done to me that even with all of that in mind, I gave it a 4 because I was just like, for me, this was the highlight story of this entire patch, and I was really blown away by those scenes. And it's just, whichever one you're kind of emphasizing more, and I think that just resonated with me. But I did go ahead and give it a 4.
As we constantly bring up, Emerald Weapon's feet were not as terrible as Ruby.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh,
we're better.
At the end of all this, we need to just do like a whole episode or a post up on the site just talking about which feet of the weapons were better, or maybe just go through the entire trial list, right? Just ranking.
I think that's going too far, to be quite honest with you. They're gonna start suspecting weird things about us.
I was really hard on the fight simply because this is in the same expansion that we got Seed of Sacrifice, and
sure,
I don't blame you at all. Like I gave it a 4 because the fight, the normal fight, meh. The extreme, to me, at certain parts, it was kind of like Thornton, where it was, here are all the mechanics right now. You have to figure out exactly what you have to do, right? I really like fights in which there are so many things going on that you're like, okay, all right, how do we even approach this? And that figuring it out, even if, like, for me, the rest of the static had already done it because I was busy with work. So when I got into it, they're just like, this is what's going to happen. Oh, look out for that. And to me, that always makes a more memorable fight. And then looking at the mechanics, I'm like, this is pretty good. And the main thing to me was the narrative decision to have Gaius not have any superpowers in Oversoul and to have his powers be the people. I like that a lot. That hit me way more than the fight did, I just liked that kind of putting the narrative into the fight. So
hearing you talk about it now, normally when we hop into a fight where the majority of us have already done it, we can just sort of be like, all right, now you go here. Okay, now you go here. The very first mechanic in this fight is those orbs.
Yeah.
Where you have to pop one of one color and one of another. And depending on what the north one is, you go clockwise or counterclockwise. And so it's really hard to explain that quickly when you yourself have halfway forgotten this already. And I'm just like, everybody just die really quick, okay?
And I don't know. That and the story, I mean, there you go.
Okay.
I mean, that still gives it I'll let you say that.
I mean, that's still up there. It's 18 out of 20.
So. I mean, serious. It's really good.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too. And I'll wait to say what I want to say, just to not spoil the scores. Next up is the raid.
Right.
Yeah.
This should be an interesting discussion. Looking at the numbers here.
I have so many conflicted feelings about this. Right.
It's like, I was right on the cusp.
I almost just want to say, here's my number. I'm done.
I don't know. Like, there are parts of it that I really love. Like, we also touched on this, right? Like, Gaia and Reen's relationship, I think, is strong. Like, I loved that component. I wish that maybe we had seen a little bit more in-depth, consistent development over the course of the entire narrative arc. Like, it's there, but like I didn't really feel like we really started to get into it. I mean, obviously, because as a character, she doesn't even show up until a little bit in, right? And then there's this kind of mystery about her, and then there's all this other stuff. I felt like the core of their connection was good. I felt like a lot of the stuff surrounding it thematically was all kinds of scattered all over the place. Like, we have the 8 influence, but we don't do a whole lot with it. But then you do have the scenes that are like the same thing as the ending of 8, but that's like Eden and the land has been restored. And then like the fights are all the primals from the past that we remembered, but like some of them do or don't facilitate the narrative of like Reen struggling with her own new identity and Gaia now going through her own journey of this. Like, it's like, this is a fun fight, we'll do it. But each arc didn't totally hit home for me in a super comprehensive way. Like, the personal character arcs. And I hate the stupid Shiva fight. I never want to do it again. I'm so sick and tired of watching that naked child get cleansed up by that snake dragon. I just like, it's like there are ideas that I love. And do I love that at the end, like, there was this whole controversy, and this is a whole other thing we can talk about, but the Twitter post that went out that seemed to be sort of indicating that we might have our first LGBT romance canonically. Well, we have LGBT NPCs, but there was this idea that like we might have our first main characters that may be in some sort of LGBT, relationship with each other. And I wasn't totally sold that was going to be the case. But then we do get the cutscenes, and it's like, sure, Gaia does say the line that is the line she used romantically with her past lover to Reen, and we do have the super mega pride crystal in the background. Like, are there things there that could codify it as queer? Yes. But again, is it actually canonically? No. Like, so for me, it was really tough because there was a mixed bag of stuff I liked, and this is not even talking about the fights, right? Like, I thought the fights were fun. But we'll get to that later. But like, there were so many scattered things about this, some that I really liked, and then a lot of others that I was like, I think we could have done this stronger.
Yeah,
there was
I think for
chunk in the middle of the last arc, just the last arc, that was really juicy and interesting about how Gaia is an Ascian and Eden is an Ascian.
I did not expect that.
Yeah, me either.
I mean, once we saw the poster, I was like, okay, well, there's an Ascian here somewhere.
That's weird.
And it's probably the thing in her head. But and the fact that those were sundered Ascians, so we get to learn a little bit more about that and what that even means. And the fact that they can sort of call to each other. And one of the most interesting things is that Gaia was supposed to be the one who was the heart of Zodiark. Supposed to be the heart of Zodiark. And then they moved over to Elidibus. So all that stuff's really interesting. Why wasn't it spread out?
I don't know.
More importantly, this was actually brought up. Not even my observation, but brought up, and now I'm gonna sit on this for a little bit because Urianger knew what happened to the first.
Yeah.
He was given that story by Elidibus back in Heavensward.
Yeah.
Knowing that and also continuing to encourage some of the stuff that happened in the Eden story is kind of funny.
He just wants
Do you
to
think
know
he
what
knew
happened.
everything? I mean,
look, Urianger not telling us some big information isn't anything new.
We're like, hey, don't lie to us anymore. And he's like, can't promise that, bro.
Yeah.
I think with Eden being Metron,
Yeah.
I think that's something that might have come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
also
know.
just don't get, this is the thing for me. Like, okay, when we were first going into this raid set, and we were talking episodes and episodes and episodes ago about what we hoped for this raid set, right? My first thought was, man, I really loved the Sin Eaters. And I was like, I thought the Light Wardens in particular, I was like, man, I love the designs. I would love to see really hard Light Warden stuff. And I had said at the time, like, wouldn't it be interesting if there was some kind of mega Light Warden or something that was out in the middle of the desert, and that's why that land was still all corrupted, and, you know, so on and so forth. And then we get Eden, and it's like the very first fight of this entire thing is Eden. And I was like, oh, well, just because it's like an 8 homage and they have this ship here. And then to get to the end of this and have it be like, guess what? The original Sin Eater, it's Eden, and we already fought her in the first one, and it wasn't even hard. But it turns out that it's sort of like a Light Warden that corrupted everybody. I was like, why is this not the final fight of this entire thing? What are you talking about? Like, we literally just get it revealed to us that this is an Ascian. The power of just the amount of energy and ether and that has been converted into raw light power, and we are fighting this. And I was like, that's not to say that I don't I like the design of Gaia. I think it's a cool design. I think it's neat, but it feels so counterintuitive to the momentum of the reveals of the story.
This is this is a really great example of the issue with having differences with Savage mode raids, raid bosses. You look at the bosses we've had in the past. Coil, we fought Bahamut. Alexander, we fought Alexander. With Interdimensional Rift, we fought Omega. With Eden, we fought whatever the fuck this thing is. Like, what is this? Why does this matter? But then in Savage, you fight Gaia, and you're like, oh, this makes sense. But if you do normal mode, you're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why I should care. And instead of like some crazy cool penultimate fight, we're just going to get some kind of generic-ish sounding epic music and then watch them eat biscuits and pick out lipstick.
Yeah.
Which, like, don't get me wrong, I love the biscuits and lipstick. I actually thought that was super cute and sweet. But again, it's like, where are these themes being reinforced throughout all of this, right? If the story of this is about the relationship between Reen and Gaia, and it's about the two of them as opposites coming together to create balance, which could have larger repercussions for things like Heidelin and Zodiark, right? Then why is that not the focus? If the focus of this, if we judge it off of our culminating boss, is what the idea or concept of paradise means to different people, then why in the world did we not get that theme throughout everything else? They could have done something super cool even with the primals, where each primal iteration talks about the Beastman's idea of what a perfect world would be.
Man,
like, they could have done something where, like, when we get to the void, we get a reflection of the people's struggles and the cloud of darkness. And at her heart, there's a line that she says, oh, what is it? We never saw light again. There's something she says in that fight. And I'm like, if that's the core of this, then where do we get the core of the cloud of darkness? Where do we get the core of what it means to have a perfect world? Like, to me, it's that there are a lot of good concepts, but nothing was honed and then communicated through this whole thing in a way that makes sense with the fights and with all the other stuff.
And we did the whole time expect them to be opposites, right? It was like kind of heavily laid on. And then in the end, they weren't connected in that way, like at all.
I was fully expecting.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was fully expecting Gaia to basically be Reen from the 13th.
Yeah.
Like, that's
also more interesting.
That's like when they set her up as the Oracle of Darkness to, you know, oppose Gaia's Oracle of Light.
Right.
That's what I was expecting. I gave a I know we're not talking about the scores yet, but I gave a different score to this because I really liked the world building than I'm pretty sure everyone else gave. I was so excited for all the reveals, but I think the reason that the raid story actually meant so much to me was because of the attachment to the role story and the Void Quest story.
Exactly.
And not because of the raid story itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say it.
I think I think Aldi, you did the Void stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff to get into it. I know I hadn't done it. I still need to work on some stuff, but I know coming into this, you know, we saw that live letter. We saw, we're gonna fight the Cloud of Darkness.
Yeah.
Gaia being Oracle of Darkness, Void Connection, like, okay, this is gonna be good. And they're like, yeah, let's just like summon her like a primal because we need to rebalance stuff. Gigantic ball drop on that one. They could have made that fight so much cooler. Also, again, at least they're consistent with that idea of like, what is wrong with us? We're like, oh yeah, like Titan's on a go-kart, Leviathan has 2 heads. Also, apparently we're thirsty for Cloud of Darkness.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know.
Well, the Cloud of Darkness design, I believe, is drawn from other Cloud of Darkness designs.
Correct. Yeah, it's another one of her forms. Yeah, but the fact that we're like, oh yeah, let's think about that time we fought the Cloud of Darkness, and this is what we
What's funny is that I wasn't even thirsting so much over her as I was over that whatever was happening with that super mega hot Thancred Sin Eater.
Oh,
got a little bit of Ranjit in there,
that was
sprinkle it on the top, wrap me in your dragon.
That was the only
Dad
fight
Chimera,
of this.
just dad smush.
Yeah. Yeah, that third fight was the only fight that like made sense to me narratively. Like that felt okay. Everything else was just like okay.
Appropriately named too, Fatebreaker.
Yeah.
Yes.
As someone who loves the second one is my favorite. Like
actually,
the actual Shadow Keeper. Oh my goodness!
Bark Knight is a good girl. Bark Knight is a very good girl.
Absolutely.
My least favorite one. I'm so bored by that.
Well, yeah, the fight's not great, but
okay.
the backstory and knowing who that is and why that is and how it relates to how Metron got into this predicament, like it just like all that together made the story kind of click. And then you get the Void Quest, and it just turned it up to 11 for me.
Right, and I think that's the problem here is because like the Shadow Keeper. And all of the build up into the Shadow Keeper as a character is in the role quests.
Yeah,
it's not in the raid story. It's over in the role quest.
Yeah.
Having already done the role quest before that, now I'm just like, okay, now I'm seeing this, and this is cool, and this is a bit of the first history, and it's like, great, we're getting this awesome history lesson, but I could see going into these 4 fights without that, and going.
I had no idea what this thing is or why I should care.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done, so I did all the role quests. I know about Silva. I know about these sorts of things. Silva? Her name is Silva?
Yeah.
Yes. So like having that context at least did make this much more relevant. And I do have to say that like I'm super, super, super glad that they put this in this time, because having something bonus, even having some of those extra dialogue options that you can get with her where she like pops into your room in that one patch and stuff, like I love that. I haven't done the Void Quest iteration of it yet because I've been working through all the other content and raiding with the static versions of these fights. And I really want to and really wish that I had, because I do think it'll change how I see even more. But you're right. Like if somebody has not done all of those role quests,
that's a pretty big gatekeep for that kind of stuff. That makes that raid so much better, especially with just like how awful it felt narratively to me this time around. To know that like there is extra stuff out there. Oh, but by the way, you have to do all the role. It's like get out of here. Like
I didn't earn it. I just watched Athos' video. You know,
well,
right? I didn't even earn it.
That's the thing. You can just do that, right? Like it's one of those things where if you don't want to spend the time and energy, you can do it and you can still get the lore. You can still see it. So like there is that. I don't mind it being like a reward for choosing to dive more into the lore of the world. I think what is a little bit funny is that because obviously they were trying to replace job quests and they were like, well, we'll tie this to your role and it'll sort of match with the roles of the Warriors of Light. Like it does create this weird sort of connection as opposed to it just being like a story quest chain that anybody can choose to do in the Crystarium. It's something like, well, if you're going to do this, it's going to be your tank one. So you have to have a tank. And that's kind of where I'm like, some people aren't going to want to do that.
No.
They may not really feel comfortable with those other classes.
Yeah.
I don't know what the solution is because I don't think it's bad, but
I think this is actually a downside of the story of the role quest being too good.
Yes.
Like at least I don't feel bad that I missed all the white mage quests about the tank, right? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
But the role quest stories are phenomenal, and I don't think I would feel out of place doing a role quest story about like the caster DPS one as a tank. Like the connection isn't that strong where I've been like, so I really do think they should open them up because the story is too good to not have people have access to. Like, really.
Yeah. It's honestly kind of like the Dark Knight quests. I had never done them until recently. And everybody's always like, they're so good, they're so amazing, they're so good. And I was
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I will say this. I expected them to be very emotionally moving. I did not expect them to be the true finale to Heavensward.
Right.
Right?
Oh.
And let me tell you that the Void quests are the true finale to Shadowbringers.
Shadowbringers, yeah.
Absolutely. They are.
Why?
You just have to kind of do it. Like, I couldn't believe when you get to the portion of the Dark Knight quests. I don't want to say anything to ruin for anybody who hasn't, but like there is a point of reflection that feels so necessary after Heavensward, and that I truly believe is your character's actual finale wrap up to the narrative of Heavensward. And it's I mean, I think you just have to kind of do it. Like if you can ever get yourself to level it, or I just kind of have to do it because it's super good. And this does feel like these quests in the same kind of vein, even though I haven't done all of the Void quests that have just been added. Like if you don't know that stuff about Silva, or you don't know the stuff about the other Warriors of Light and the bits that you get if you do those role quests, it's like you're missing out on some massive stuff and really important stuff.
Right, like I would have not cared about Metron and Logriff if I didn't know about the people who fought them. Like honestly.
Yeah.
It was cool to get the nice little touch also about the naming convention, like the true names of who they were before they were raised to Ascians, you know. Hades, Artemis, Gaia, Greek mythology here, because it starts, into speculation of who is who was who. Like, was Asium Hermes or Apollo or
we do have shoes. Hermes
shoes. We have Hermes shoes, like, and so that's why I really like the raid story, because it opened up all of that. And and we brought this up with the trial story as well, about how these side stories are so connected now to the MSQ and the world building there. They're not actually side stories anymore. And that's what I loved about it. And that's what I loved about, like, all the stories on the first actually do come together.
Yeah.
But
so we talked about it a little bit last week with the whole hey, this was supposed to be the 8 fight. And we saw very, very little. Most of the stuff, with the exception of the figure of Eden itself, is just vague Final Fantasy VIII references, and they're kind of solid.
And you really need to know 8 though for some of these.
Yes,
you definitely.
I mean, for one of them, all you have to do is watch the opening trailer. If you come here, you will find me. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
like some of the little lines
they say, like,
that they worked in.
That's the thing. Like you have Gaia driving the skipper, and she goes, "Oh, my leg cramped up."
Yeah.
There's one. Then you have, "Oh, don't be afraid," which is the fight. The song for the fight music that they threw in. It's just like super little stuff, and it's like, I appreciate it, but I think overall, right, when you
wanted to see Ultimacia.
Yeah.
Right. I think part of the problem in this raid is player expectation. Is ultimately what it came out to be. Is you have this quest line about Eden, and people immediately like, oh, 8 raid. Okay, cool. So at the end we'll have this really cool Eden boss, but we had him at E1, and then instead we get this like super weird thing with like 20 boobs and like dudes that live in her thighs. Like, it's really weird, and it's not a Final Fantasy boss, right? Like every other raid series has had.
You broke her.
I just have to take a second. Never before while playing through an MSQ have I ever said to a primal when first going in, I did not expect there to be as many boobs as there.
There are a few more.
And like,
Well,
obviously,
and
it's
the
based off of a real world
Yeah.
historical statue. Like, this is very important to know. Like, this is
Yeah.
not something that, like, okay, breasts are breasts. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna, like, say it. Like, we don't have to sexualize them.
Yeah.
The idea
Yeah.
of fertility, the
Right.
land,
Of
like,
course.
there's so
Yeah.
many statues of goddesses and fertility goddesses that, like, all depict this. So, like, we can all get over being 10-year-old boys inside and be like, okay, this is a thing and this is part of why the imagery is happening. But Fusion, I think it's exactly what you said. And I don't necessarily think that this is completely on the players as far as expectations go, because sometimes players do have, I think, unfair expectations that maybe when they don't get met,
sure.
they get
Yeah,
upset
that's
about.
fair.
But this was something where, I mean, even like you were saying, Pook, there were certain things set up, and the way that they were set up, I was like, oh, this is the expectation that I have formed because of this. And that's not to say that a lot of them, I think, were even like misdirections to sort of trick you into then the real review. Like,
no, this was
The story just wasn't woven well.
like fighting Artemis in the Eden story is not like it was so out there. Like I get the Artemisia, Ultimisia thing. I get that. Another 8 reference, by the way.
Yeah.
But still, just being like, yeah, we're just gonna throw a statue of Artemis at you. Like,
come on.
Where's the connection to that otherwise?
And I feel like the worst part for me, just because you see this over and over and over again in JRPGs, is this story was about love and friendship the whole time.
Yeah.
And
I
I mean,
stories about love and friendship, but
I just
I
it's
wish
cool
they,
if
I
they're
wish
about
they
love
would
and
have like.
friendship.
I wish we got the payoff on the love part of it.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
That
oh
would have
my
been
god,
nice.
It needs to
I'm
be
so
about
bitter
more
about this.
too, and like more specific love.
Yeah.
Come on and
okay,
actually
so-
just say it. Not like, who wants to go for a ride? Oh, Reen does. Also, there's only 2 seats, so bye.
See
You know,
ya.
like it's.
And everybody knows that that's not true. We all have that. We all have them. And the other thing is like cringe boyfriend, right? Suddenly introduction of cringe boyfriend.
Yeah, overly attached boyfriend. Yeah.
I was just like,
Yeah.
what is this? Where did this go? Okay. And it's weird too.
Which would have made the love. Okay, look, as creepy as he was, like if Gaia had said, "I won't forget you because I love you," right?
This was so.
They could have, you know what I mean? They could have actually stated the love between Gaia and Reen and used it.
Yes.
As a story tool here against creepy boyfriend.
Right.
But no, she decided, you know what? You did some weird stuff and you totally tried to destroy my memories, and it's cool, it's fine. Maybe we can like totally hook up in another life or something. And he, for his part, also he spent so long trying to wake her up, right? Trying to bring this love back to him. And when he finally gets her, he doesn't even consider what she wants. And to me, that is incongruent.
Oh yeah.
Kind of nutty.
Oh, the whole thing is bizarre. And when you think about it, when we first find her, she is like chained up on Eden.
Yeah.
She falls down from the thing.
What is it?
The whole thing is just a mess. Like we go into that last fight, they merge and then they're Assy and Prime. But then like what is this Eden's Promise boss? Like it's based off of Artemis, which is the guy, but it has, again, like it's a very feminine figure, so I have no idea what's going on. And then Savage gets Gaia, which makes more sense. But for us, we have this weird narratively, and again, you know, I bashed this weird kind of middle phase, right? Again, I applaud them for trying something new, right, in a fight, but it really kills the momentum of the fight. Absolutely. And in the cutscene before, they were showing off the memories and stuff. Just put the snippets in that. Like thankfully, that's not in the Savage version of the fight.
I didn't mind that, actually. I thought it was fine.
I mean, this is the difference, though.
They had voice acting too, which was
Yeah.
That's rare. That's rare.
It could have worked if that whole fight was Gaia. And we had these memories that were being summoned from her that we were that
right. That the Metron part of the Ascian Prime that is the Gaia boss is destroying the memories while we're fighting to save Gaia by fighting Gaia. Yes. I also like that this was a discussion that happened during the world race because we started talking about door bosses, and you know a lot of people are actually fond of the fact that door bosses were brought back, but there's no carryover mechanics between the first half of the fight and the second half of the fight. So why not make it for 4 and 5? Why does it have to be 2 parts of one fight? They're 2 separate fights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or crazy thought, 5 fights. We've had 5 fights before.
I missed that.
Give us a normal version of the Gaia fight.
Yes. There should have been a normal version, honestly. Like, I almost would have rather have seen it be reversed, where Gaia is the boss, and then in Savage you get
an extra mode.
You get
so
the extra,
some weird thing that whatever.
You can eat it, or you get whatever. Because then it feels like, oh, okay, well, this is just kind of a bonus thing. And I don't mind that Savage has differences. And I am honestly after Shiva, which I don't even complain about because of the mechanics. I thought the mechanics were fine. I complained because I hated the length. And I thought I hated running it every single time we had to go back in and work on something in the end. I was so tired of doing that fight. And I never want to feel that when I'm raiding, right? Even if you get worn out because you've been doing it a lot, I want to still feel as though like what I am doing is a fun challenge. And that was one of the only fights that I was like, I really just don't even want to do another 14 minutes of this, you know, like, and you shouldn't feel that way. So like, I don't mind that there is a checkpoint. There is this door. It doesn't bother me. I think it's fine. But like you were saying, there needs to be something, right? Like there needs to be some reason for it, or some kind of, you know, now we're going to move to the next phase, or just split them into 2 fights, or like, I don't think the fights have to be that long, you know? No. So I guess as a sort of transition, there's so many things I want to talk about. I can't even figure out what I want to specifically pinpoint.
Right. You know what's funny is like we're skipping around because the story skips around so much.
I do want to say before we get too far from it though, that I absolutely agree and felt the weird dissonant tone with creepy boyfriend. This is before we get too far, because I'm sure we're going to actually start talking about the mechanics, and that's, you know, where I think we should head. But I could not get a read on those cutscenes. I was like, oh, he's a weirdo.
Yeah. Was I supposed to be afraid of him or not?
Yeah. Especially as a female player, like there are certain things that set off alarm bells for you, and like not that anybody else who's sympathetic can't have those same alarm bells set off, you know, but like I was sitting there like, oh, he's a creepo who's been creeping on her for a million years. And then we get these cutscenes where it's like, oh no, wait, it was reciprocal. She does seem to actually be into it. Like it seems like they did have a love that they shared. And then
why?
Like, I know, but then you go back again and I'm like, I have so many questions. And like I liked his lines about supporting her, like, you know, you have always actually had a stronger voice than you give credit to, on one hand, and then on the other hand I hated them because I was like, why does she have to be insecure,
right?
You know, I was like, why does this female character have to be bolstered up by this guy? Why does she has a seat like any of them? She's there.
She's part of the convocation. Come on.
I'm gonna say a name. Nomura.
Yeah.
The bad man.
I was trying not to call Nomura out, but like,
okay, I don't want to spoil Kingdom Hearts for people now. It's a ability of memory, but like, can Kairi have any ounce of agency? No. Neither can Gaia. Neither can Gaia. That's a thing.
Yeah, it really is.
So what bothers me even more about the creepy boyfriend is the creepy boyfriend. It's not even he was the boyfriend. He was the person who was given the memories of the creepy boyfriend.
Right.
And wants to recreate that. Like
it makes it worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. It feels like it should have been more of, again, it's not reinforcing the themes that you have, right? It's scattered all over the place because like this could have been a really strong opportunity to illustrate healthy love versus unhealthy love. If we had gone all in with Rain and Gaia, which they should have done, we're overdue for canonical main character LGBT representation in this game. We talked about it in our LGBT cast that we did for Pride Month. Like, we're overdue for it. So like if it had been, and like sure, there all sorts of love are valid. They can love each other in a way that is, you know, platonic or familial. Like that's fine. But I do think if they wanted to go this route of romantic love, use this creepo as the counterbalance to this. Make it so that those things that are weird and uncomfortable, when you then look at like what Gaia has found separate from her history and legacy, like let her and Reen have a moment where they're saying like, no, what we found is true. Our emotions are real, and no matter what our history, no matter what we have, like, we love each other, and this is healthy romance. And whatever you had, it's a weird figment of a paradise that never was real. You know, like, that's great. But you can't do this weird middle ground and then put in this line at the end where she's like, maybe I loved you, but maybe I don't. But maybe we'll love each other.
That's the worst part. Don't encourage crazy guy. I just don't do it.
I feel like I need to go back and rewatch everything because I didn't get creepy vibes at all from this dude.
And that was actually one of my points last time.
End of this. I'm of the notion that they used to be together. Assy and memory things happened. He's been looking for her the whole time because he remembers, but she doesn't. And I don't get this like, oh, creepy boyfriend vibe. I get like just lost, separated lovers over time trying to get back together.
It's not him pining for her. It's when he finds her, he traps her.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is
okay.
Yeah.
Now I understand. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna delete the things that you're attached to now, so that you only are attached to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay. I got
gaslighting.
Yeah, that is messed up. Never mind.
This is the thing, though, because I don't think you're wrong for reading it that way at all, Fusion. Because the problem is that it's coded into so much media that, and I know this is gonna sound preachy, but like, it really is true, and it's so important to be aware of this. It's coded into so much media that these incredibly unhealthy things are supposedly somehow healthy. Right. And you see so much, especially in relationships between like a man and a woman, this idea that like a man having control over a woman, if he is doing it romantically, makes it romantic. And like, it's tough, because that's not to say that this is always something that we see. And I do think that, again, if they had decided to lean the opposite direction, and this had been about the tragic love shared between them, that should have been a theme that was, again, reinforced from the very beginning. But when it comes down to it, the imagery is bizarre, because when we first encounter her, she is literally like chained up, much like we saw Minfilia be like chained up on that cross like figure almost. And then we free her from him. And then she grows and changes and flourishes. And then we get back to this guy, and he's like, well, I loved you a long time ago, so, and you don't remember. So because you don't remember, I took all your memories away. And now you must love me, or you must merge with me. And if you don't merge, it doesn't matter if it's against your will. I'm going to strip you of everything, and then we're going to become one again. And like, those are bad. They no good.
Yeah.
It's no
this
good.
guy could have sat down with her and been like, hi, I'm from your past. We used to be involved, and if you want, I could give you those memories back so you can decide for yourself what you want to do with them. I would appreciate it if you would consider me, but, you know, you're yourself. Just like a conversation in so many cases can fix everything.
Yeah. And it's okay if he's an assassin who's lost his mind. Like, that can be a villainous aspect, right?
Right. That's,
but in that case, I feel like she should be way less considerate of him at the end.
Yes, exactly. The tone is it's conflicting. Sorry, Aldino, go ahead. Is that and I are just
I was going to take it away from this because
okay. That's fine.
We're talking about love, right? Mitron is the first Sin Eater. What are the Light Wardens named after?
Love.
Types of love.
They're named after types of love.
It's always been to him about love, right? And when he splits off, or when this happens, it's all different types of love, and he's the bad love that's left behind to me.
And yet, the Sin Eaters, types of love, their mechanics, types of torture.
Exactly, right?
Which is incredible if they had actually reinforced that in the narrative.
If they had done, if they had touched on that in Eden, oh my goodness, right? If they had touched on this kind of deranged love being the source of these reflections of love that were also deranged, my goodness,
and
that'd been great.
I think that's another big thing that's
also
really big detriment
they're
to the story. Is there's so many little things that knowing them make this story better,
right?
But they're either gatekeeped or like gatekeep, or you just
even going so far as like the titles, like we're saying here, the title of the raid, Eden's Promise Eternity. That's basically what she said at the end. Maybe next time we can totally hang out, bro.
That's garbage. I hate it. Get it out.
Yeah, but it is Miss Eternity.
Yeah.
What would have been so much cooler, Aldino, you have hit something that I'm so sad we don't have now.
I know.
What would have been so much cooler would have been if from the get-go he was set up as a villain. We get to some sort of culminating thing where we are facing the embodiment of love and destructive love, and all the mechanics are these torture mechanics from the Sin Eaters, and then it ends with Gaia giving him forgiveness.
Right.
Like, even if she says, "No, like what you did was wrong. I see," like, and I mean, they could have played it totally different with him, right? It could have been something where he has been caught in a cycle, he has been corrupted, the love they once shared was pure. That's fine, right? Like, you can do that. I don't think that just because he's there and he loves her, it has to be creepy.
Right.
But they could have done something like that. And then the final thing, the name above his head transitions and it's forgiven blank.
Yes.
And then he dissolves.
I know.
So Square, if you needed a guest creator for the next raid,
It's so.
It would have been so good, and
knowing all of that changed my score. And Pook, I think we might have a similar score. I don't know. But...
Should we get to the scores? Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
do we want to do scores or do we?
No,
Well,
if you have
no. Say
something
what you're
else
gonna
to
say.
go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to talk about the oh, shut up, phone. Hold on a second.
It's all good.
My phone loves talking back at me. So one of the reasons that I gave the score I did was actually because of the fight mechanics, but also because of the connections to the rest of the world. Like, because I can tell that my score is going to be different from so many other scores here.
Oh yes.
Because, like, you know, in the Cloud of Darkness fight, the almost platformer, like, you can't stay on this square for too long for it. Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that. Seeing the return of the tethers and all that stuff that was familiar. Like, that was great. I love the little shell game during the Bark Knight fight.
Yeah.
That was everything about Thanjeet.
Yes. Thanjeet is great.
Thancred with Ranjit and a little bit of Innocence worked in. If you saw the gold, the wings, I absolutely adored that. And then of course the 3 elements were tied in too. I died on that fight because I didn't get a chance to do normal until after I had already been doing broadcasting for the world race. So I knew how the mist mechanic worked in Savage, but not in normal. And so I died hilariously to the easier version of the mechanic because I was so familiar with the Savage version.
Right.
Of it. Yep. I thought that was hilarious. And then I'm definitely like I still need to get a drop from Eternity for this week. Normal.
Yeah.
And I've already gone in there 3 times and I'm like, do I have to go in there a 4th time and do that intermission a 4th time?
Right.
Yeah.
That being said, I love the draw, the cast, and the junction.
Yes.
Like that is it's a fun mechanic, especially on the fly, to be like, okay, this is Ifrit plus Leviathan.
Yeah.
You know, like that. Yeah.
The mechanics are so good.
So
for me, I think I wish that the tethers were a little easier to see. Just from like a DPS standpoint, like, you know, you're on the back and you have the things in front of you and you're angling your camera and it's sometimes a little rough to see where the tethers are going. So I don't know if they needed to like spread those things out or if there's a better way to do it. But I think
it might be because you're way up its butt. I'm like, I don't have a problem with that, but I'm a ranged person, so I'm like farther back.
Well, I do this all on Machinist now too, and even for me, like,
the thing I really had to rely on is the control up or down with the arrows that moves the camera up or down from your character, like where it follows you from. Also, the tethers are color coded.
Yeah.
I would have loved if they gave it like a pulsing light of that color as well. That would have been much better.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll just see the color of a tether coming up from the boss, but not see what it's junction to.
Yeah.
And just be like, okay.
I'm glad you brought us here, Pook, because all of my very strong feelings aside, I have enjoyed rating this tier. I mean, I've actually had fun. I've enjoyed the static. We've been working through. We haven't been going as hard as previous tiers, so we just cleared E9 right at the beginning of Tuesday, and we're up to like Enrage and E10. And I think it's fun. Like, I think the mechanics are creative. I've enjoyed them. I like the fights. I like the music. Maybe could the first and second one have had a little more difficult? Maybe. But I mean, even with E10S, which is sort of the face roll, as everybody has said it, of the tier, I thought the mechanics were clever. Like,
Yeah.
Especially that first time when you don't know what's coming up, it was really fun to be like, oh my God, she makes a shadow of us. Okay,
Yeah.
then what happens? And then it jumps. And then when she does, like, I really loved that because I think it was a good demonstration of taking the theme and like the boss's abilities and then reflecting it in a way that feels thematic and like a little bit of a brain turner. And even though it does have simple ways around it, and when you figure it out, you figure it out. I did think that the fights themselves were pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they did a pretty good job. I liked them. I've enjoyed them. I haven't hated running them, but I also have not done the third and fourth yet, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I was okay with the first fight. It was interesting. I think it's really interesting that the tiles freak people out unnecessarily because they're really not super hard.
Super easy to do.
You just kind of go shuffle, 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 shuffle between two people a couple of times, and it's totally fine. But there are still people who are like, oh no, it's like just move forward and backward. It's fine.
I'm a machinist, so I can always move. So I have a great time freaking other people out because I can move onto their tiles and off. I could just dance around the entire time. Because I don't have to stop the DPS, so I'm just like moving the entire time, and everybody panics.
My least favorite mechanic from that first one is actually the summon one, because I look at her, I'm the one who has to call the thing. I look at her, I'm like, okay, she's fine. This one over here is fine. And by the time I get to the third one, my brain turns off, and half of the time I like flip which hand she has for some reason.
Right.
So I kill everybody.
As a red maid, I absolutely hate the tiles. Absolutely hate them.
Oh my
because,
gosh.
Because, I'm a ranged, so I'm in the back, and I'm like, my mana is really high. I would like to do my combo, but I can't. So, you have to figure things out around that, and also raising in that part. Please don't die. Do not die. I'm not going to try and put you where you're supposed to be. like that's kind of insane, right?
I mean, the one good thing is that they do have something in there that when you have that res like condition, you do not trigger the waves.
Yes, exactly.
Which
you can run for a little bit.
I think saved it, because if it had been the opposite, that would have been a nightmare.
Right.
Like,
that would have been horrible. Yeah.
A nightmare. It would have been the worst. I just think that part of why people have found certain things difficult, and even those reflections, right?
Yes.
Is because the mechanics this time around test various skills other than just like just take in the information or step out of the thing or do this exact, like, it does make you view in a different way to some degree. And I think that especially with the negotiation of space, that's not something that we have always seen a ton of being put to the test in 14 Savage, Extreme, Raid, stuff like that, right? Where it is like, other than I am melee or I am ranged, I stand in or out of the AoE, having a like, we must now all collaboratively step, move,
right,
like, it's a little bit different, right? So I think that's why it's caught a lot of people off guard. When you figure it out and you just make it routine, it's fine. It's not the end.
It's scary personal responsibility, because in raids it's mostly like, we all do this, we all stand here, we all do this. If you have this one thing, you have to know to do this. But in this part, everyone has to do it right, every single person. And I've long professed it, and Zen's gonna be like, oh, he's gonna say this thing again. Everyone, I don't care if you are a world first raider, everyone has some occurrence of an accident, right? If you're really good, it's like 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30 times I do this fight, I'm gonna mess up. But other people in the group are like 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 5, right? All of those have to line up. Right? You have to be on the time that you did it right, and they did it right, and that person did it right. So that's where you're hitting up against that, like, oh goodness, if one person messes this up. Yeah.
That was always the fun part when I was progging through E7 with the warps. Because one person in our group just really had a hard time with them. And it's like, you warp somewhere else, you kill somebody else, and that's it.
Tiles are personal responsibility. Kind of finding the copies of Thanjit is kind of personal. People need to find it, so you have to work together. The shadows and the side that they're cleaving is 100% personal responsibility. It
reminds me a lot of, is it the Hello World mechanic? The one where everyone does those are my favorite.
Lights rampant.
Mechanics.
Yeah, lights rampant.
loves
Light
them.
Rampant.
So many people hate them, and they're like static breakers. But
Yes.
for me, like, I can absolutely, like, it was so funny to me because I didn't even do MF when it was like super current. Like, I went in with the static for a tryout, and they took me into it blind, and they were like, we are just going to explain the mechanics on the fly, and we're going to see how well you do.
Oh my god.
And I was like, okay. And like, various things super tripped me up. When we got to that part, I nailed it. Like, it was like, we did like 2 tries, and I was like, oh, I see. But then again, I've also done dance, I've done theater, I've done choir, I've done all of these things all my life that are like conducted group efforts. And so, like, for me, those mechanics, a lot of times, they come more naturally to me, you know, because I will naturally sync with a group of people and do the thing. Like, but other stuff can sometimes super trip me. But
It's
I'm
funny.
really good at it.
It's funny you should pinpoint on that kind of mechanics, because I sort of feel the same way. I like the like pattern. If this, then this. If this, then this. And that's the only part I like about the second fight. I find everything else in that fight just super snore worthy, and I don't know why. Like, it's not a terribly badly put together fight. I don't really like it. It doesn't bring me sparkle joy in my brain. It just, okay, well, eventually we'll get to the part that's interesting, and I don't know.
I don't know if it's the common community perception, but I hate it as range. I hate everything about everything so far as range. Like, I haven't gotten to the third one in Savage, but my god, if you would just stop making me move around when I have to cast. As I should say, range caster DPS. Good god. I want to go back to Summoner from Red Mage. It's so bad, because Summoner kinda is a little bit more mobile.
We were talking about
but Machinist is pretty solid this expansion.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, that's the thing. We were talking about this in Emerald Weapon. What? I forget which day, but we were like, oh, the thing where we run around and have to dodge back and forth is kind of fun, because, you know, we are all here and we can all, and Charles is just like, yeah, screw you guys.
I hate.
Charles is like, I hate all of you.
Like, okay, sure, I just won't ever cast other than this one thing I can cast that uses mana while I'm running around the circle. This is cool.
I mean, Aldino, I will say, the last few things that we've had have not been kind to melee.
I mean, that's true.
Like, that's not to say, I mean, I've been playing White Mage. I used to do Astral Legend and Stormblood, but I've been doing White Mage with our current static for all of Shadowbringers. And, like, I feel you, there's stuff, it's frustrating, and there's times where I'm like, oh boy, well, I guess I'll just see what I got on the fly. You know, I'm gonna make sure I have these things so that I can kind of go. So it's like, it feels like it's always a trade-off. I will be interested. I mean, they seem like they're continuing to sort of fine-tune it and come up with new ideas and all sorts of things. But having a tier that did not feel like all bad for melee, all bad for ranged would be so great. Be like, let's sprinkle it in. Let's try and vary it up with each one.
I don't even feel bad for them. They punch harder than we do.
You know, I mean, there's always going to be that.
All right.
I
else we want to talk about
am excited to get into Daji.
Savage.
I thoroughly enjoy the baby mode of it. When we went in as almost a full static, as soon as we could the morning of release, and we got murdered like 3 times in a row because we didn't realize that he was doing the fire lightning thing around him. But as soon as we got that, it was like, oh, this is this and this and this and this and this. But the one person who was in there with us was doing all these things, and I'm like, they hate us because we don't know what we're doing. So I'm just like, hey, how do you do this? Hey, how do you do this? Hey,
that did take me a few times to get that part down too. Yeah.
But
so I feel you.
I'm ready. I've been told that it's like Midgard Stormer and something else combined, and I'm like, what I really hated about Midgard Stormer's mechanics was that when he did the flip or the spin, he was big and giant, so you couldn't really see him very well. But you can see that lightning and fire, so I'm ready. Right. I'm ready to punch this stat in the face.
Okay. So I guess we'll do scores.
Scores, yep.
Rook gives it a missing out of 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got something in my eye during all of that.
That were okay. Overall, it was not good. I gave it a 2.
Yeah.
I actually, like, as we were talking about this, I almost regret giving it a 2. kind of think maybe I should have given it a 1, but it's a low 2 for me.
Yeah.
Ooh, I give it a 2. Just because of the story and stuff. I mean, you heard all my thoughts. I've enjoyed the mechanics, I guess, well enough. I've enjoyed the fights well enough, minus Shiva,
Right.
over the whole thing. But this definitely will not be one of my favorite raid sets that we've ever had.
Yeah.
I think it's time to put out my torch. I'm about to be voted off this island. I gave it a 4.
That's fine. We enjoy opinions, and if they're different, that's even better.
The mechanics were a lot of fun. I like the world building. I don't think that Eden now, if I'm looking at Eden as a whole, all 3 tiers as a whole story, it's kind of disappointing. I kind of felt the same way about Alexander's story, where it was like, okay, what's going on? And the last 4 was like, okay, here's all the exposition you should have gotten in the other 2 tiers.
Yes.
I feel like we repeated that.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
See, I split the difference and I was at a 3 because of the first lore. To me, that the world building of the first, the kind of payoff, and then the connecting the dots with what we're going to be talking about soon. I was like, I was kind of 2 or 3, and I was like, 3 because Void Quest.
I have a question for you, Puka.
Okay.
Did you like Final Fantasy VIII? It's okay if you don't. It's okay. No judgment.
So
No judgment.
Brooke's face, right?
I did not like it when it originally came out. I've gone back and played it since, and it's not my top Final Fantasy. I don't dislike it though.
Yeah.
The only Final Fantasy I truly dislike is 2.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I think if you want an idea of how I feel about 8 and related things, my favorite Final Fantasy is actually 10. So
okay. Solid.
Probably tell you like how I am as a Final Fantasy player.
Right.
So the rest of us here are all big 8 fans.
I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that y'all were pretty let down.
No Ultimecia, zero.
Big weird random weirdos that happen to come together. Yeah. So like, there's some stuff missing. Although that iteration of the Extreme is fantastic.
It's nice.
Yes.
That song is great.
So good.
I'm gonna listen to that on repeat forever.
Yep.
I don't know. I just I don't necessarily care that we didn't get like a straight homage to 8. But it's weird. It's just weird to me. I'm like, why do an homage if it's not really an homage?
The bigger issue is that we didn't get an homage to anything.
Yeah. Like
that's the thing.
An homage to common sense, an homage to love. We didn't get anything.
I mean, all of these raids have been like, okay, and then at the end you fight this classic Final Fantasy creature or whatever, and instead we got weird boob thing.
We didn't even get zippers. It's just like I don't care. I would have rather either see it all be new stuff, or have some new stuff.
Yeah.
I guess again, it goes down to the absolute core of this whole problem, in that thematically, I just don't know why they did it. It's like, yes, I guess 8 has some theme.
If you're gonna do 8, make it 8. Don't be like super skirt around it and try and make it original, but also it didn't work.
Well, or actually use the 8 themes in a real tangible way, and then bridge. I just didn't get why they did it, unless they were trying to hint that we're gonna have more 8 stuff down the road, and this is just a little bit it just felt again really dissonant. And I was like, I mean,
because Gunbreaker has a gunblade.
Yeah.
Right. So let's 8 references.
Let me tell you that the corner they wrote themselves into by letting us restore that part of the empty, because now the rest of Norvrant, or whatever they actually call the planet that Norvrant is on, is going to become inhabitable, and they're not going to do all that world building.
No, it's not.
They're not going to.
No.
It's just like
we can hope that in the future, because time runs differently somehow, right? That we'll leave and we won't be there for a whole expansion, and we'll come back and it'll be like, hey, we actually made a city out there. We can hope, but I don't think so.
We've built up all this of the empty and stuff. Also, everyone you knew here in Shadowbringers is now dead.
Yeah, they can't do that. They cannot do that now.
Yeah.
They can't do that because of the Void Quest.
Oh.
I can't wait to talk about it.
Should we
actually
think of what's next?
Oh
wait, no, we are on other, so we can talk about that.
We are on
now.
other. I do have a question for everybody. So we've talked about obviously this is a spoiler show.
Yes.
But these void quests are super, like, you need to do a lot to get into them, right?
I'd be fine if we just talk about the themes, or like
I don't know about Brooke, but I would be fine with that too, because I think the two of us have not done them.
Okay. I mean,
as in we're keeping it vague, or we're going for like full spoilers?
Vague. Okay. Being vague.
I would say it's up to both of you. If you want to have, for me, my personal opinion, if you want to have a robust discussion about the reveals, do it. I came here knowing I hadn't finished them, and I figured there was a chance I would get spoiled. If, though, you think that they are so worth it that this should be a thing that people should strive for and aspire to doing.
I almost feel like this needs to be continued.
I think we should be safer on this. And yeah, I think we should.
You know what?
And the Lorecast.
Lorecast, but also we have a series where we went through and talked about each of the quests.
We did.
Yeah.
We could do a
we
culminating
just tack one onto that.
The void
Pook,
quest.
do you want to come back for that?
Yeah, Puka, do you want to come back?
You know what? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. Then
we'll have our people call your people, and
yeah, no, because
I need to get people first.
There's so much I want to say, and it ties so much into every other score I've given. So
And you know what?
Like,
we're already at 3 hours.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my god, we are.
I don't want to take that experience from somebody else.
Yes, I really would.
If it was just
I would say the same thing about
side
Orla.
quests, it's one thing. But if it's really that big of a deal, I think we'll be good.
It's literally world changing.
I'm gonna go and do it tomorrow.
Dang. I gotta do that ASAP.
So, I guess how do we want to do other than? Because that was literally the only thing I was talking about.
The only other
so
thing
Aldino gave other of 4 go do void quests.
There was a Nier quest.
That was a pretty good quest. I thought it was pretty good.
It was actually really good as far as Nier quests go. I feel okay.
I mean, that's not a very high bar, but
yeah, my issue here is that Nier just feels pasted in.
Yes.
Like, I love Nier, like, and it's great, but like, it's connect. They did such a great job working Ivalice into the world. Like, this is the story.
We're right there with you. We've talked about this a little bit before,
and I'm just like, okay, payoff where?
Yeah, where is it?
Where it at?
You're like looking around. You're like, hello.
And this little quest that they gave us is one small nibble, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I wonder
maybe
how
this is going somewhere now.
Remember how they had you pick one or the other?
Yeah.
Of the dwarves? I wonder if that's different because.
Well, we can all talk about that now.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember who they picked?
I went with the dwarf that was wearing black.
I went with the aggressive lady dwarf. I think she's a lady dwarf.
I don't remember.
In my head.
Okay, so that's already the opposites. Who is a crazy robot thing in your story? Well, either one.
I haven't done it.
Well, for me,
I haven't done this side quest yet, so I don't know.
Oh no!
I don't
no,
remember
it's fine.
who I picked.
Fine. I don't care.
Literally, I don't care at all.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
The one in white is a robot in my story. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm totally with you on this, but as a person who knows nothing about Nier, has never played it, having done this quest, I now care. I now care what's going on.
Yeah,
Okay.
The raids are fun. Puppets bunker.
Yeah,
like,
I love
just
raids.
like, but I'm just like, as far as the story and the connection to the first, it's just like, oh, just an alien ship.
It's
Which
there.
Now makes me question space versus shards versus, like, are there also other planets out there?
I mean,
that's been
there
the
are because of
question
Midgard
ever
Stormer.
since we had
Right,
Midgard
but
Stormer.
but did Midgardsormr come from another planet, or does Midgardsormr's planet also another shard of the source?
Right. Yeah. Did
That's
that
where
we
I'm-
don't know.
Did the Sundering Sunder the entire universe, or just
we had actually asked Koji that. Gosh, I think last FanFest. Just kind of how far that split went, right, of the source, and I don't think they're saying. If I
Right.
remember that right.
I think that's probably
go look for our FanFest interview with Koji.
that's
Yeah,
probably
it's in there.
probably a tool they want in their kit for the moment they decide to do
Yeah.
something
absolutely.
with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the way the story unfolds it has always given me the impression that it is actual space, like a different planet, because we know that like the dragons lived somewhere else, and that Omega and all this stuff in their planet was destroyed, and they had to flee. And they talk about the journey taking ages, and like Omega, who's been traveling through space, like, and yet, like, yeah, it's very strange, right? Like, it's very hard to quantify. Like, couldn't the dragons just teleport through space and time and just go to a different, like, if it's one of the shards? Couldn't Omega just do that, as opposed to like having to travel to a whole nother like system in space?
Right. So if only the source was sundered, then we've got the source is one planet with 13 reflections, right? And then beyond the source is actual space with countless other worlds, and apparently there's a near world out there.
Yeah.
And
Very
there's a dragon world out there.
Yeah.
Like,
are you, what does that mean?
No, that's what I think too. I mean, until they decide what they're going to actually put down in stone, we have no idea.
Yeah.
So, last week, I talked about, going back to other, Triple Triad was a lot better than I was expecting.
Drafting Triple Triad is fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel bad because we really, I feel like, until Aldino kind of tried to like set us straight last week.
Draft is fun.
We were just like, whatever, it's like Triple Triad. They spent 20 minutes talking about it during the live letter. Who cares? And Aldino's like, it's going to be a game changer. I'm like, all right, like if you say so. And I tried it and it's awesome.
Draft modes in card games are just, they are a lot of the fun. Like building the deck in real time, it's kind of fun.
I would absolutely recommend. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, so it's on a timer, like every 2 hour timer, like ocean fishing is, right? But if you're not doing anything and you're logged in, just go do it. Just give it a shot. It's been great.
And go do the ocean fishing for us and let us know if it's.
Oh yeah,
please.
I
do.
That said, I appreciate the fact that with things like ocean fishing that were recently released, we are getting a pretty like current update. It's not like they were like, here's a thing and we'll revisit that in 2 years. No, they're updating it.
And I haven't had a chance to do the ocean fishing, and I think part of me is because, like, when it first came out, I did a little grinding. I got the mini and I got the mount. I don't need to go back into it, but I am hoping that for people that maybe didn't get that the first time around, and then interest in the content kind of died down and made that harder to get, I hope that people are getting another shot now to try and get those rewards.
I remember shortly after 5.3 came out, I actually introduced a new group of people to the game that hadn't been playing it, and they got distracted by ocean fishing and literally never finished the MSQ.
Yeah,
they
ocean
fished to their heart's content, and then we're done.
Yeah,
like
I spent way more time doing that than I ever would have thought.
Yeah,
well,
it's great. It's great content.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something to do, and it's good to have. It's good to have that. Trying to think of other categories.
There is the new
Monk
classic UI.
Oh
yeah.
Oh, and Monk, yeah.
I was just gonna say, as a total, just a little toss in. I like the new housing items. I like all the new gear. I think it's fun and diverse. I hate that Vera still can't wear the headpieces.
Yes.
But as far as like, the other thing, like the new gemstone vendors and other stuff, like I liked the little additions. I really like all the housing items and stuff that they put in, and I think they were great choices. Good gear diversity.
Rook's been grinding fates now to get the.
I need to do that.
MR.
I've been watching Rook do it, and I'm like, oh man, I never actually unlocked the vendors myself.
I'm so glad I did that ahead of time when 5.0 came out.
Some of the stuff from them can sell for pretty decent.
Yeah, definitely.
Like if you get there and you get it, you can just turn them over, and it's like it's a pretty decent way to make some gil on the market boards with the housing items and the special things you can, like the crafting items and stuff that you can exchange for. It just takes 1,000 years.
Yeah. Or
One
if you want to make a little shrine to everybody's new favorite villain, you can buy cartons of milk.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, Fusion, it's so funny that you said that, because When I was looking at the housing items, I was like, look at all the cute things that they added. Oh, look, cookies. Milk. And I never thought I would ever have such a visceral reaction to having a carton of
It's gonna
milk.
be kids
added.
growing up now. Their mom's like, "All right, time for your glass of milk." No, I don't want to turn into that guy.
Oh my god.
I've seen what milk does to people.
What is your favorite city, Fusion? The name is not coming to my head. I want to say Amdapor. Yes, Amarat. Amarat. I have an Amarat. I had an Amarat Light that I put up on sale for 1,000,000 gil because I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do with it, but I bought it. So I was like, hey, if somebody wants it for 1,000,000 gil, then they can have it. It's sold for 1,000,000 gil. So
yeah.
If you have gems, you can make some money.
I have a couple of those. What I did do though that I think it was really cool. I took I got the painting of the Tempest of Amaranth, and I took the Zodiac statue from Hades, and then I put it kind of off to the side, and then I got a spotlight so that the shadow of Zodiac goes onto the painting.
That's nifty.
Look at you with your
I don't play around.
move.
I don't play around with my housing. Yeah, I mean, we did get those the display cases. We talked a little bit about those last week, since it's not really spoiler, right? It's like, here's a display case. Those are kind of nice. The new UI.
Did you try the shelf thing?
I did try this. No, not yet. I will though. The new UI, I still have it on. It's okay.
Very
like
blue.
it's.
I wanted to
I
point
still
out
think it's. Yeah.
About the classic UI is it's high contrast. It's actually an accessibility feature as well. Like, not a lot of people saw it that way. But yeah, it's high contrast. And with it being as blue as it is, it's actually really great for people who are red-green colorblind. So not only is it nostalgia, it's an accessibility feature, and I'm always excited.
That hadn't even occurred to me. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think it's still, for me, just a little bit bright, but I still have it on. It's something different. It's refreshing after playing this game for 6 years with the same UI, because who uses light UI? That's just, I mean, I know somebody that does, but I can't.
I see in chat.
I can't either.
I see in chat the question: have we tried the dungeon visit system explorer mode? I haven't done it myself, but I have a lot of friends that have been in there to G-pose, and they are G-posing. They're just doing their best life. They're living their best life right now. And I really love the fact that I can go into stuff now, and I'm like, oh, I could do a screenshot mode of this one. Ooh, I actually have an upcoming RP that's going to be set in one of the dungeons. I'm like, we can just go in. We don't have to do all the nonsense with, so that's really great.
It still has a timer on it.
Yeah, still does.
Yeah. I was gonna say, any patch that gives me furniture, I'm usually happy with. So bouncing off because I'm like, yeah, furniture. However, that antique sink comes from submarines, and I don't have that area yet, so I can't get a new sink for my kitchen.
Who's like in a submarine going out and being like, hey, that's a cool sink that's down at the bottom of the ocean.
It's an antique, I guess. I don't know.
Back with us. Okay. Fantasy games, am I right?
Yeah.
So, Monk.
Yeah.
Monk.
Let's do it.
So,
I need to try it.
Yeah, I want to try it. Like, from what I hear, like I said, it's been super busy for me. I'm usually like living on the places where you would to find out these information. We kind of, when we talk about things like DPS and such, we kind of just go, the places where you would go to find those. But the consensus that I see is that it's much simpler to a lot of people's chagrin.
Yeah.
The burst is better. It is better if you have less uptime. I mean, it's not as bad. Not saying that it's better if you had less uptime, because it's melee, you need uptime. But it's a little bit more forgiving in that manner. And whether it's a nerf or a buff, kind of a nerf, a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard it was a nerf.
Yeah, it's close, but not really. Like, the less uptime you would expect to have for a fight, the more damage you would do compared to last time, right? So it helps you on those fights, but if you're just going all out, it's a decrease, right? If you have the time to go out, it's a decrease.
Yeah.
Slightly, and it's very slightly from what I know.
People are wondering why they didn't just have the what's it called? It's not an ability because that's the thing we hit the buttons for. The trait. The grease lightning trait. Why didn't they just give that the buff that having full grease would be, rather than lifting potency on everything?
I don't know.
Well, they have an idea of what they're planning for 6.0 adjustments at this point, I'm sure. So probably something to do with that would be my guess.
Every time I see the rework of a job come along, and it always ends up being like a more simplistic version of it. Let's talk about Warrior, or Astro with the cards, to make it easier to play. I always expect that the other side of the trade-off is that the content and the mechanics will keep you more engaged to make up for it, and I don't feel like they always meet that that balance or that promise, because when they decided that all healers are only going to have 2 or 3, if you're lucky, DPS buttons, it was so that you didn't have to focus on DPS, because you would be able to focus more on the healing that needed to happen, and then gave you content where the healing was actually pretty light and you had a lot of time to just glare. And I feel like the same could be said for okay, Monk is easier to play. Now are there harder fights for Monk to play in?
Not this tier.
And I'm really hoping that but I don't know how many abilities they plan to give us in the next expansion, if they plan to give us abilities at all. Because with Monk specifically, every expansion has been, here's a quality of life to keep your grease lightning up. Now they don't even have that anymore. So who knows what's coming?
Yeah. It's they wanna raise the floor, right? How much damage a mediocre person will do in this job, but they keep lowering the ceiling too, and you can't it makes sense, but you want to expand it. You don't want to just shift it down further towards minimum, because then you start to get bored. You want to expand. You want to lower the floor, raise the ceiling, or keep it the same at the very least. And they've just continued to lower that ceiling, and that's part good, but part really bad for the people who want to raid because you're into the optimization of raiding, right? The clear doesn't matter, right? Yeah, we cleared it. Cool. That's great. We got that's good. We may even be world first. But then comes the optimization, which is a lot of the fun. The reclear, the getting past the enrage first, the first optimization. But then after that, when you're reclearing, what else do you have to look forward to? These fights aren't that.
Strats.
Yeah, exactly, right? You do all that because you're trying to get the damage, right? You start removing the upper limit, or how hard it is to get to that upper limit. It's just not as fun.
Yeah. And even if you're not a hardcore parser or things, right? Because it's funny, Aldino, because I think a lot of my raid mentality is almost it's almost the opposite of what you said, in that clearing is sort of key for me. And I optimize naturally. I'm I want to pay attention to what I'm doing and go through it, but I am not that person that's just every single, what was my parse? Am I purple?
Right.
Did I get purple parse? I hate the whole parse discussion. I think parsing is a really good tool, and I think it's totally fine for people who want to use it. But I do not like to constantly triple, quadruple check my numbers. Yeah. And as long as I do what I need to do, and we're getting through, and I feel good, and it's not I am pulling the team down.
Right.
I personally don't tend to focus on it. But that doesn't mean that I don't like classes that let me dig into them to really, really have fun and learn how to play them super well. You can do that even in a dungeon. You can do that in any content where you're just oh, how can I be really good at this class? How can I play this class and get with Astrologian and Stormblood? I loved it because I'd be how can I just always have my cards ready and this and that? I'm gonna put this and then I'm gonna do that, and that was super fun for me, even if I wasn't always that person that was how many DPS did that one change give me? You know, you can still have fun and let your brain noodle around puzzles in a way that is engaging, and it doesn't always have to be exclusive to just like high-end parser Savage Raiders. And I think that a lot of times people assume the two have to go hand in hand. And I know that's not like what you specifically, like, you know what I mean? But like a lot of times I hear that like, oh, well, classes get dumbed down because casuals can't do it. And it's like,
no.
It's like, no.
It's the forever challenge of trying to balance so that both the hardcore and the casual can enjoy the content.
It's so difficult, right? I mean, we already have jobs that you would be like, no, don't try that if you're new. And Monk used to be one of those, right? You would say, maybe try another melee first to get the hang of it.
I mean, Machinist used to be that too.
Yeah, Machinist used to be that too.
Yeah, you know, it's weird because we're talking about like this, and yet I feel like Machinist is in a really good place, and it probably has the least, actually does have the least buttons of any job.
Yes.
Like on bar, least buttons of any job. But like, I actually feel like I'm still doing stuff with it and finding the best ways to do it. Like, so it's not necessarily we cut out buttons, but I don't know where the line is with some of these jobs. I would really, because when I talk about like jobs that I tell new players not to play, it's Black Mage.
Yeah.
Even though Black Mage is insanely fun, super easy as far as like, here's the rotation. But the second you start throwing in now move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want the game to continue to have challenge, and more importantly, I want more challenging side. I would love a mythic dungeon system. I'm sorry. I know. I every time this question's brought up, Yoshi P just kind of butts up against it because it was like, well, we can't balance it around 4 players. Okay. How many jobs do we have in this game now? You keep adding jobs. Some jobs will just stop being taken to content at all if it's challenging at all. If we were to stay in a 4-person party, like let's be honest. What make it a 5-person party. DPS queues get shorter because 3 DPS get taken in per tank instead of 2. Like, we don't need to be World of Warcraft exactly, but the idea of having more content to challenge yourself at, to throw yourself at, it doesn't necessarily have to be ultimate.
Yes, I totally agree. And like, even having seen that system in WoW, having seen a system like that with the scaling fractals in Guild Wars 2.
Yes.
Like, it's so fun. And for people who like me or like anybody else that enjoys the overall kind of flow and feel and design of dungeons, it gives you something else that like you can work towards. And I love feeling like you're working through and you're progressing, going to different tiers, and you get to reuse stuff. Like, but it's fun, and they're like having that smaller unit. It does feel more directly like we can all work together really closely to do this. And I do think it would be something for them to really consider. And people have been asking, and they've been playing around almost in the other direction with like these big, instance maps and this sort of open dungeons with Castrum. And now we're going to get this trial that's a whole new thing that has a ton of people. And like, I'd like to see them bring it the other direction and do just a party and do a like mythic dungeon. Like, that'd be so fun.
I think that'd be a great, because you look at, how many people are doing Castrum now?
Yeah,
like people are having issues getting groups through Castrum, and it's tied to a quest line. So
yeah. And I'm also over here like, oh yay, Bajda has dangerous mobs, but gives you no reason to actually focus on the mobs.
Right.
Like.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, okay. What was?
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that there's dangerous mobs there, but no reason to actually focus on them. Like there's. Like, so it's not like this is open world hard content, because it all just leads into people queuing into Castrum and leaving the rest of the instance alone anyways.
So my gasp was kind of for a silly thing. We learned that the way you say it is Bozya.
Bozya. Really?
From, I think, one of the Emerald Weapon? I honestly don't remember which cutscene it was.
Somebody said it like that. Yeah.
Somebody in a cutscene somewhere said Bozya, which is funny because I've been saying Boja.
Yeah.
Boja.
Okay.
Boja is
Bozya.
Okay.
Let's not forget this was a podcast that started off on Orzopedia.com.
Right.
I'm not like trying to correct anybody or anything. I was just really excited that they finally pronounced it somewhere in the game.
Yeah. another place where voice acting would help.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
I mean, and
Yeah.
of course, then too, there's like different dialects that will say things different. You know, it's like it can always be a little bit spicy.
Yeah.
Tomato, as long as you understand what they're saying, it's fine.
Yeah.
Hello-nay.
Yeah, hold on.
Hallone. Yeah. Okay, so other content and everything else within it. Yeah, I think overall we got some decent stuff this time around. There's a lot of things, I'd love to see them keep doing with additional content, but I felt like overall pretty good, and we have some more kind of other content coming up in the next sort of interim patches. So
Yeah.
I think it was pretty solid, especially for a patch that I think already featured, big PvE stuff with the raids and dungeon and trial and so on and so forth.
Justice in the chat. Blue Mage. Oh yeah,
Blue
that was
Mage,
a thing that
yeah.
happened.
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually something that like I'm waiting for the 0.5 for the other content. It's like, you got Blue Mage, you've got the 48-man thing, you've got like so that's where I'm like, I outside of quality of life is always good, and I'm always going to give a thumbs up for quality of life. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, little side things like taking, screenshot modes and dungeons, like that's always going to be a thumbs up from me. The new collectible gathering, which I have not touched yet, which apparently is greatly improved.
I found one node when I was out getting a treasure map. It's a pretty slick UI. Like, it shows the ring, like as you hover over the abilities in real time, it'll show you like how it'll go up by and stuff. It's really nice.
The UX is great. Like I have a lot of hope that as we get more things, they're gonna keep revamping the UI for some of the things we already have to be more like that, to be more reactive.
Sure.
That'd be amazing.
I feel like we already talked about maps last time pretty solidly because there's no spoilers there. So
it's more
just
of
know
what
that
we've
happened.
come to expect, and it's fun. Yeah. We ended up doing maps instead of raid last week because people are still trying to get through storylines and stuff like this. So like, let's just do some maps. That's fun.
Yeah.
All right. We'll run through the numbers then. For me, it was a 3.
Was I a 3? I'm pretty sure I was a 3. Depending on how I feel about these void things that you guys keep talking up, maybe I should have gone with a 4, but it's too late now.
You can tell who's done the void quest or knows more of the void quest by the scores. But and that is part of it too, right? It's this content, really good stuff. It's cool that it's there, but also like don't make it a pain in the ass to get to.
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
So...
It's very true.
Yeah, I gave it a 3 out of 4. This one. I mean, I think honestly, if I had done the void quest, probably would be 4 out of 4. I just haven't had time to do them yet, which is really unfortunate. And I even have them unlocked. Like, it's not as though I could just hop in, so I feel extra pathetic.
Oh, that's all good.
I gave it a 3, but only because of how much has to be put in to actually access the void quest. Like, if this was just the void quest category, it would have been 4 easily. But because it's such a broad category of everything, and I feel so strongly about the void quest, and it's gated so heavily, it's a 3.
Yeah.
I cannot hide my bias towards the first now that we're at the end of Shadowbringers, and just the implications that arise from the quest. It's my favorite part of this patch. It might be my favorite part of Shadowbringers so far, honestly.
Goodness.
Just the implication and where it could go.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay.
I absolutely love it to death. So I gave it a 4.
100%. As somebody that was
agree.
excited about potential things because of maybe Cloud of Darkness fight and Eden and then just got punched in the face by it instead, I'm excited that you're excited. So I think it makes me want to geared up my monk, but maybe I'll get my scholar done and do those role quests instead.
Just thinking about that makes me want to knock another point off the raid points that I gave, because thinking of what Cloud of Darkness could have been and then doing the void quest and thinking even more of what Cloud of Darkness could have been. Like, I'm just like, oh no.
It's a tough situation that it's so gated, because like I said, I had to watch it, and as I'm watching, I'm like, okay, whatever. And as it goes through, I'm like, why can't everyone do this? I don't know. I have to stick with my 4 because they didn't destroy Monk 2. I was very concerned that they were just going to absolutely destroy it. As someone who just enjoys more complexity in the game, like even if it's a job that I'm not playing, I really like it. So
yeah, I geared it up. I was like, I'll maybe at some point, like I'll be able to, because I haven't really leveled Monk since like 1.0. Like it's still sitting at 50. So, you know, I got a glam set up. I got my Kettle Nexus hand-to-hand things out. But now I think I need to spend my free time getting my Scholar and my Roll Quest finished up, because I'm excited for seeing what that is. That is going to give us a total score for patch 5.4, 79 out of 100. You may be thinking, but how does that stack up against everything else? Lucky for you, I had that same thought before we started today, and I made a slide. So that is going to put it in 4th. 5.0 was a 92. 5.1 was 85. 5.3 was 83. Here then we had 5.4 at 79. 4.5 at 77 and 5.2 at 77. So you can really see how pumped we were for the expansion, how still on that hype train we were for the first patch after the expansion, and then the rest of it.
Yeah, and then, 5.3 goes back up, though. It does go back up.
Yeah, I feel like
it goes back up.
I feel like this is pretty accurate.
It's funny to me. I need to rethink everything about 5.1 because I feel like now looking back at it all, for me, I probably would have gone 5.3 highest.
Right.
But like it's so easy to forget what other content and other stuff can
and it's really interesting too. I mean, because you really have it's opinion based. It's also, you got to look at, you know, the state of the world at the time. How was our mindset, right? As objectively based as we try and be, sometimes
was dungeon and part of MSQ or not? That makes a big difference too.
That's a thing as well, right? So
was it crafting when we didn't care about crafting?
I'm actually now trying to remember exactly what was in 5.1.
Yeah,
Grand Cosmos.
Grand
Cosmos.
I'm surprised that with how much we passed Grand Cosmos, I'm surprised that it still came in above 5.3.
I think it's because 5.1 is was that the beginning of Ishgard Restoration? When did Ishgard Restoration start?
That's a good question.
That might have been 5.1. I don't remember.
Yeah, like
go read the review and find out. It's probably listed in there.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Honestly, 5.3 stands out for me. The scores I gave on 5.4 had a lot to do with me mentally comparing it against other 0.4s. Because SE really likes their pattern, so I'm like, okay, so where does this stand in relation to what they've done with 0.4s before?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great way to approach it. Yeah,
makes sense.
All right.
Yeah, I'm seeing Pixies.
Like, I really like the Pixie
Quest. 5.1.
Pixie Beast Trap was good. Yeah.
And the main story
Enix, man, they're like, okay, so the downside is we're gonna go down to 1 dungeon a patch, but also we're giving you a playground. What?
Yeah, it was the near patch too.
Oh
yeah.
Is there anything else? I mean, we are at, oh my gosh, almost 3.5 hours for this game.
Now that's
I don't think so.
It's a beefy,
I feel like we
episode here.
I feel like we covered it. I feel good. I feel good about our coverage of 5.4.
Yeah. All right. Before
do
we
your void quest.
Yes.
Do the
tomorrow
void quest
on the agenda.
Apparently they're very good. Get your things leveled. Before we do our usual sign out here, Pook, would you like to give any shout outs? Tell people where they can find you.
I'm at Pookajutsu everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Twitch is all at Pookajutsu because it's apparently a very unique name. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
I stream 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday. MMOs, a lot of Final Fantasy XIV, story-driven content. And I would love to see you.
Go hang out with Pook. Pook is the literal best. Pook is the literal best.
Pook is so cool. I love just like watching other people's streams and then just Pook just like shows up and it's like, hey, what's up, Pook? He's so cool. All right. If you want, you can email us, aetheryte radio@gamerescape.com. You can tweet at us at Aetheryte Radio. You can find us on Discord, discord.gg/gamerescape. We also have an Aetheryte Radio channel on there as well if you want to come and talk to us about the show.
Please talk to us.
Spoilers. We do have a spoiler channel right now for 14. That'll probably be gone pretty soon here after we get that review up. That's usually the kind of cycle we run with that. You can also find us Twitter and Facebook at Gamerescape as well. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us today. Pook, thank you so much for joining us as our guest.
Thank you for having me. Seriously, this was a blast.
We are taking the next 2 weeks off. Some holidays are coming up, and you know what? We're just gonna take some time off and hang out and relax.
And you should too.
Yeah.
Treat yourself to some downtime.
We will be back. Gosh, what is that then? Was it the 9th?
The 9th sounds right.
The 9th. Sure. Yeah, we will be back on the 9th. Hope is Lorecast, but we'll see. We gotta, everybody's taking breaks around the same time, and we'll see how if people are taking a little extra break this year. Everybody I think deserves it. So, but we will be back the 9th, regardless of what we're talking about. So we hope to see you then, and everybody have a good, happy holidays, happy New Year, all of that, and we'll see you back here in 2021.
Goodbye.
You guys.